hopefully, I think my internet's working on the other computer. I've been going back and forth between two computers and a phone. It's been interesting. So we will see you all back here in 15 minutes.
When I use two monitors, it gets sometimes backwards. So anyway, so the reason we're going to be doing this today, talking about building support for your ideas, is because after you've gone through this course and whatever your final project is, most likely you've come up with a new plan or a new idea or a new program, and it's something that you're going to want to have to sort of get through middle management, right? You're going to try to do something that hasn't been done before, right? You're going to try to have to gain support for the ideas that you might be threatening somebody else by putting forward this program. People might be overwhelmed by it. They may not know what to do. So we're going to give you some ideas today that are based in what social science, cognitive psychology, behavioral science tells us about when we're communicating with others trying to build support. So, because we know at UF, as other big institutions and even small institutions, sometimes it can be really hard to get people to support our ideas. Sometimes just getting past out of the gate it can be like a crusade. So we have to make sure that we're communicating effectively, we're not using abstract concepts, and getting the person that we're trying to get on board to sort of look beyond the status quo and go, okay, yes, I support you. We need to think outside the box. We need to persuade others to come on board. And if you rely on the strategies that we're outlining today, hopefully you'll be able to design a tailored approach to get buy-in from everybody. I had earlier shared a link in the chat. I know, Brandon, you reshared it. Does everybody have that? It's the worksheet that we're going to be using today. Whether some of you might have already downloaded it because it was part of the Canvas packet. If not, I have screenshots of it throughout, and you can just use paper and pen and sort of jot down as we go through the worksheet. You can jot down your answers to each stop. Each time I stop, I'll give you a screenshot of where we're at on the worksheet, and that way you can just jot it down, right? So, all right, so before we get into all the different strategies, I want you to think about the last time you were trying to get someone to gain support for your ideas. Brendan, can you launch this poll? So if you want to translate your idea into reality, you inevitably have to convince them. So what are some of the things that you might have tried? I want you guys to take this poll and click. You can click as many as you want. What are some of the things you've tried when you're trying to gain support for others for your idea? And you might have to scroll down to see them all. So click as many as you want. I don't see anybody clicking yet. Is it, Brendan, can you see people?
Yeah, it looks like 3 or so people have started voting.
Okay, all right. Oh, that's, I guess, because I'm no longer the host. I can't see who's
there's a couple, there's a lot of options here, so it might take a second.
Okay, yeah, so just look through them and click all the ones you've used. And Brendan, when you see you've got, I think there's 28 people in the room. So when you've got about that many answers, you can stop it.
Sounds good. All right, about 20 more seconds. I'm going to close the poll. Looks like we got just about everyone. Okay. Can you see those results, Ellen?
I can't probably because I'm sharing.
Oh, I can share them. Here we go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Now?
Great. I can see them. Perfect. Okay. So we have, I don't know if I can make this bigger. So the majority of you said use data and statistics to make the information seem important. A lot of you mentioned your association with people in your programs and the audience admires. You let them know that this is a big idea that will change things for the better once it's implemented. And what was the least one? Emphasizing that it's not that much different from what we're doing now, and you consider the emotion that you want them to feel. Great. Okay, so I think you can close that now. And I want to hear from you guys either in the chat or out loud. So do you guys agree with the ones that people picked most? What was I meant to take a screenshot of it. I think you can open it up again. The one they picked most was data, right? I use data and statistics. Do you guys agree with that to be, do you agree with that? And why? Like, why do you think this is important?
I will say that I think data is the currency of academics. However, you've said that, you know, it is not ultimately something that changes people's minds, because we have to get to the values and emotions-based stuff to do that. But
True.
Man, academics love data.
Yeah, very true. And one of the things that, you know, we sort of talked about this earlier when Trish was talking about it, and you mentioned handing out giving them a handout, and there's nothing wrong with that. Giving them the handout either the day before or right after or right before you talk, you know, depending on how you're going to go. But we can use the data to support it. We can use it in our talk. But absolutely, if they don't care about the data, we have to first make them care. We have to first make them care about what we're talking about. Then they're going to listen to the data and take the data to heart. So, what about the one? Can you put that up again, Brendan, so I can see them?
I also just posted a screenshot of it in the chat for anyone who wants to save it.
Oh, thanks. So what about, I let them know this is a really big idea that will change things for the better. Anybody want to comment on that? Like, why would you do that? What's your reasoning with doing that? Because 73% of you said you do that.
I said that because I know that if it's a big idea that'll change things for the better, I'm hitting on the pain points of the folks in my office. So if I'm like, things aren't great now, if we do this, this is what's going to happen. It's going to get so much better. For me, it's been very, I don't want to say manipulating. So it's been very convincing to help others to see that you don't like this, do this, and you get these results.
Right, right. Okay. Cool. Well, I want you guys to keep these in mind as we go through the session today of the strategies that at least what psychology and behavioral science tells us should work when we're trying to build support for our ideas. Oops. Now it doesn't want me to change my screen. There we go. Something's happened. Okay, so this is the worksheet that you guys have. And while we're going through this today, I want you to think about specifically a project that either you're working on that you're thinking of pitching. And like I said, it could be your final project for this class, or it could be just another project that you're trying to get through. So we're going to think about building support for your ideas in 4 steps. And the first one is to make your ideas concrete. Second, figure out exactly what you need. Find the right person and become an expert to them. And finally, you'll script and present your ideas. So today we're going to cover these, and some of these you will notice how they are building on what we've already learned and how we can start applying some of the strategies and imperatives and concepts. So the first is to make our ideas concrete. Avoid abstraction. We saw this today in some of the TED Talks when they had, great use of metaphor. When we heard the doctor talking about pain, he didn't use these big abstract terms. He gave us great metaphors, concrete examples, right? So when you're advocating for change, you have to get super hyper focused, right? If we do lead with abstract concepts, you're going to leave space for people to insert what they think those terms look like, what it means, right? They're going to insert their own biases. And I know you've heard us talk about this before. If you present it without the concrete ideas, they might insert the most extreme interpretation of your idea, right? They're going to use their own experience, their own anxieties, right? It can easily be exploited and misinterpreted. And so that's why we always sort of tell you, you've got to really make sure you're not using abstraction when you are talking and presenting. There's a theory called motivated skepticism, which you've heard, I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's basically the mistake of applying more skepticism to claims that you don't like, or to claims that you do like, right? So when we're faced with information or ideas that align with our pre-existing beliefs about the world, we easily accept them. But if it's something we don't like, then we will argue against that. So for example, you might not, if you get a medical test and you don't agree with the results, right? It says something's wrong, you're probably more likely to argue against it because you don't want to be sick. So you're going to have all these reasonings in your mind to why, oh, it must have been wrong, or maybe I ate right before the test, and so that's why my blood test is wrong, or maybe I, hadn't rested enough, or whatever. So we try to argue basically for what is best for ourselves, right? So when an issue, can you guys, does anybody have an example of that, of like something, an issue you feel really strongly about? It could be a diet you're on, a technique of training you're using, a political candidate, but we won't go there. So how would you react if research showed your opinion was wrong, right? Kim, I see Kim's going, grimacing, right?
I have an example. Right now I'm doing diet-wise lower carb. And then if you like, so bananas have 21 grams of carbs in it, right? Which is high for a stupid banana. And then my godmother comes in, she says, yeah, but it's natural sugar. It's not the same. And I'm like, no, the body is not recognizing that. And I could be wrong. So please, we don't have to go there. But like, the body's not recognizing that it's different. Sugar is sugar. And she and I go back and forth. And I'm like, I don't even want to hear this because all I see is the number 21. So I'm not going to eat the banana.
Right. And that's a perfect example, because you've chosen this diet. You've done whatever research you've done. You said you're not a dietitian, but you know what you've read, whether you've read it or whoever's told you about it. And so you're like, nope, I'm going to argue for my point as much as I can. So unless someone could come to you with really, either they were in a position of authority, a dietitian came to you who's already studied this, or someone came to you with information that is unambiguous, right? You're going to continue to be skeptical about it. So this is why it's really important to not, to make sure that we speak in concrete terms. This is a study from Ruskinsky. It's like from, I think, 1990. And basically what she looked at was the effect of wording the effect of wording when public support for government spending. So if you look at this word law enforcement, this is an abstract term. You might think, and depending on where you sit, you might think law enforcement, that means police brutality. But you also might think it means to start a neighborhood watch group, right? So when you're using these words, like law enforcement may not seem like an abstract term, but it actually is, right? People bring their own biases and interpretations to it. And these are actually 3 examples from her research. So people would not support drug rehab, but they were more likely to support helping people get treatment for drug addiction, because drug rehab might have a different connotation. Same thing with welfare. People didn't want to support welfare, but what about providing minimal guaranteed income for the poor? Now, this was from 1990, so I would say now if I were going to do this, I wouldn't have said for the poor. I probably would have said for those in need, or those who for out of necessity. But like I wouldn't have used the word poor, because I feel like that's sort of pigeonholing. But anyway, so you can see the difference, right? What people think when a term you may not feel is abstract actually is abstract. So this I'm going to break you guys up into groups. And first we're going to do an example before I send you out. So here we go. The tsunami impacted the charity's profits. So you're writing up an article for your organization and you use this sentence, the tsunami impacted the charity's profits. Well, what does that mean? Impacted it how? Up or down? Profits, were they negative, positive, whatever? So here is a much more concrete way to say this. The tsunami resulted in more financial donations to the charity, but expenses still exceeded income. Therefore, profits are down for this quarter. I know this is a lot more words, but we have to be really careful when we are describing situations, especially when we're talking about projects that we're trying to get pushed through, because otherwise people would think, oh, it affects the profits in what way and how and why. So what I want to do now is I'm going to break you guys out into groups. Please take a screenshot of this. There's how many of us? 20, 30 people, Brendan?
Yeah, I'm getting those rooms set up now with about 5 or 6 people per room.
Okay, so which will mean what? We'll have 6 rooms?
I'm sorry, I'm sorting through. You have like 6 accounts logged on, so I'm trying to move your people around.
Okay, that's fine. So basically when you guys are broken up into groups, what I want you to do is everybody take a screenshot of this, or everybody that can take a screenshot. And then in your group, I want you to pick one of these statements, right? And then I want you to work in your group to try to create a concrete sentence or term. It doesn't really matter what the context is. So vulnerable water sources, you can think of it in any context you want to, right? But I want you to look at these and how can you rework this to be more, to be a concrete term or a concrete sentence or thought. Does everybody understand the assignment?
There's going to be 5 rooms. Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine. 5 rooms.
Okay.
So, but I'm going to still let you guys pick which one you want to work on. Okay. And then I'll send you out for, what time is it? It is 11:05. I'll send you out for 7 minutes, which means you're coming back at 11:11. Is that my math? All righty. Brendan, I still can't see actually I can stop sharing. Okay. I don't know the groups because I wasn't running it, but does anybody want to share out which one they started with and how they changed it?
Sure. Our team, which picked number 4, which was that we need to diversify our team.
Yeah.
And what we wrote was much longer than that. The central leadership team needs new perspectives from people from different walks of life by educating staff, updating hiring practices, and communicating transparently about these new initiatives.
I think that's great. It obviously depends on the context that you were speaking that in, and I assume you've already presented the new initiatives, but it's very clear these are the 3 things we want to do, and this is how we are going to diversify our team. So again, yes, it takes a lot more words, but when you are trying to explain your idea to somebody, if you are not concrete about it, like if you just said it's really important that we diversify our faculty, which I hear that a lot, we need to diversify the faculty. Well, what exactly do you mean by that? And so this is why just being aware of using that concrete language and realizing that people insert their own opinion when you hear the word diversify, it might mean one thing to one person and something else to somebody else. Does anybody else want to share what their team came up with their group?
I can share for our group. We chose number 3, which was there's a need to increase the community's connectivity. And so what we came up with was due to social distancing restrictions, it is important to improve connectivity among SCA cohort members to ensure course outcomes.
So I like that, but I still don't know what you mean by connectivity. Like, do you mean it's important to increase how many times they meet, or how many times they meet offline? Or like, I'm still a bit, connectivity still hasn't been really defined in my mind. Like now you've defined who and for what, in what instances, but anybody else's thoughts on that?
Yeah, we talked about that. We chose that same sentence in our group, and we talked about the fact that connectivity is an inherently uninformative word because it is sometimes used to mean technical hardware and Wi-Fi and things like that, and it is sometimes used to mean emotional connections. And it's people like the fact that it could mean either, and it might mean something else, and no one really knows, but it sounds really buzzy. So we eliminated that word in our revision.
And what did you replace it with?
I wrote it down in the chat. Well, the first thing we needed to do, I'm sorry, I just shared the chat with members of the group because we ran out of time while we were working on it. So the first thing we needed to do was to actually make a subject to the sentence, which is currently written in passive voice. So it's unclear who's responsible for doing anything, which is inherently bad. Unless, of course, you want to mask responsibility or avoid, tasking someone with something. But when I teach this in my classes, I teach the classic mistakes were made about the Iran-Contra scandal. In that case, it was very important to Reagan to avoid actually taking blame for invading Nicaragua or trading arms for hostages. So that is a classic responsibility evasion move, which you can use strategically, but it's not generally a good practice. So we changed, we decided that the first thing we would do was make someone responsible for something. So I'm putting our revision in the chat now. We decided that UF senior administration needed to do something because they should take responsibility for things. And we defined connectivity as technology resources that would support remote work and learning. So it's a pretty banal definition of connectivity, but it is at least concrete, which means that people will know from hearing this that it means we need to buy more webcams and assist people with the cost of home Wi-Fi.
Right. Good. I think those are good points, especially like, as you said, connectivity can have so many different different meanings to different people. That's actually a great word. And Jacob, I think it was great because your group defined, as Trish said, defined who is they. So it's the talking about the group, the SCA Academy, what is you wanted them to do, but just tweaking that connectivity thing to, do we mean, is it more online meetings? Is it, what exactly are we meaning by connectivity? So great. All right, well, let's go on so we don't, I just want to take up your whole run into your lunch. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? Okay, share. Are you seeing the correct screen, Brendan?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so now that you're really clear on the importance of using concrete language, how can you make your idea concrete? Now, hopefully you've already done this, especially if you're thinking about if today when we're going through this exercise, if you are thinking about your final project in this case, pitching your final project, then you've already answered these 4 questions, right? So we know that by answering these 4 questions, it helps us become more concrete. Then we have to make sure we're using the concrete language, right? So, whoops, went the wrong way. So this is the worksheet. So the first thing we need to do is answer these 4 questions. And again, I think hopefully you've already answered this for your final project, but whatever you're thinking about today, I want you to take a minute and let's write down your answers to the 4 questions. It is 11:19. I'm gonna give you literally 4 minutes. So we're gonna go to 11:23. Gosh, I'm having to math. In write down your answers to this in relation to this big idea that you're getting ready to pitch. Any questions? You've answered your 4 questions and you've identified precisely what you're trying to change and whose help you're going to need. So now you need to start thinking through the resources you're going to need to make it happen. You're going to figure out exactly what you need to execute your innovative idea. So as we dive into what we need to think about, what do we actually need? How much of whatever it is do we need? You know, what's the timeline? When do you need it? Who controls that resource? I did an example here to illustrate this with an imaginary project. So suppose I want to ensure that all the students at CJC wear masks in the fall, and I want to double down on the university's efforts of mask wearing, because I think our students might have a different, they all want to, we want to use the same message, but I want to double down that appeals directly to my CJC students. So I'm thinking, okay, let's start our own stuff on our own website. So how much is it going to cost me? Oh, it's going to cost like $25,000. Here's my budget. Here's when I need it. Who do I need to talk to? My associate dean, because Spiro holds the money to the purse. Whose approval do I need? Well, my director, because I'm going to have to work on this. I'm going to want someone to help me with the website, some editing, some graphics, access to implement. Well, I want to go through a bunch of I want to put it on all of our college platforms, you know, our social media, et cetera. So I need to talk to our director of communications, but also to the dean. What skills am I going to need? I'm going to have somebody help me with the web design, somebody help me with editing, somebody help me with graphics. And you can see I've got my timeline and everybody that I'm going to try to get on board. How much time of theirs am I going to need? Am I going to need any community involvement? So these are all the things when you're thinking through your resources that when you go to speak to, as you can see, there's several people that need to that I need to target, or I need to hone in on and make sure that they're on board in order for me to do this project, right? So I need to know exactly what it is before I talk to them, exactly what it is I'm going to need to ask them for, right? So this again gets back to being really concrete when we're talking to them. So this is just my quick example to illustrate, but now I want you to take a moment and I want you to do this with your idea. So I want you to dive into what you need and start writing down what resources are you going to need to make this big idea happen, all right? How much are you going to need? Like if we're talking money, or are we talking time? When are you going to need it, and who controls it? And again, it might be, you might have a couple people that you're going to have to talk to or make sure you have on board before you present this idea. Perhaps you need to get your chair on board before you present this to the dean, or perhaps you have to get a student leadership team involved before you present it to, you know, the next level. So think about who controls it. And again, I'm going to give you, it's 26, I'll give you 5 minutes on this to write out. Figured out what you need. All the you've identified the various resources, right? And on that worksheet, you made a list of everybody who holds the resources and what skills you need. So now we want you to focus in on the right person and become an expert in them, right? And by this, we mean to do as much homework as you can on them before you have the meeting. If you're meeting with someone who has you're going to ask them for something in the budget and you know they control the budget, learn as much as you can about the budget, where they are right now. Do they have other things that they're worrying about, or other expenses that they might be, so they may not be willing to, they might know that they're getting ready to have a budget cut. And so this may not be the best time, right? That you might want to know how what are their long range plans? Where are they intending on using that budget? So basically find out as much as you can. If you need, if your ask is, well, I don't need any money, but I need some time. I need my colleague to help with this skill set for this particular project. Well, understand what else is on their plate and how much time and available how much time they might have to be able to work with you. So if you have to go ask their manager for their time, hey, I just need 10 hours of Craig's work to help me with this website, make sure that you understand what Craig already has on his plate, because you don't want to put him in a bad situation where he's like, yeah, but I don't really have 10 extra hours, right? So whether you're focused on getting resources from an organizational leader or a peer, it's important to become an expert in them. And a way to do this is to understand how they think. And this is something we keep talking about. We've talked about throughout this course, is how important it is to understand who you are talking to understand their, where their worldviews are, their potentials for harm, identify their anchors. So when I say identify their anchors, we have to understand that we are not rational beings. If you've read Kahneman's work, Tversky and Kahneman's work, we are not rational beings, and Dan Ariely is a great one on this, right? We rely on these heuristics, these mental shortcuts to quickly assess any decision that we make, right? And one of these shortcuts is what researchers call an anchor, and it's basically where you have sort of disproportionately weighted your decision on the initial information you've received. So Alex received the information about the bananas being 22 carbs, and you are stuck on that. So no matter what anybody else, like, all you see is that 22 when you look at that banana, right? So that's an anchor, and that's where you're starting from, right? So basically you are biased to that 22 carbs, and anything else you measure, you're going to be measuring it from that. So another example would be like, okay, if you're buying a car, right? And you're not an expert on cars or this model, but you read some stuff online and you read that, oh, the average cost is $20,000, right? So you go down to the dealer and he's got one for $18,000 and you think, oh, it's great. So you buy it, you walk out because anchored in your mind is that $20,000. However, you go home and you read another website and someone had it for $17,000, but you were anchored with that 20, so 18 seemed low. So this idea of anchoring works when people negotiate salaries. It happens when people are asked to estimate how much time it takes to complete a project, right? Even when, how much time should you let your kids watch video games or play video games? You are anchored in that, in your initial perception, right? It's that set idea. So can you guys tell me any examples of when this has happened to you, like, and why you think it happens? Just even a banana split. Anybody want to speak out loud, or you can put it in the chat if you want. Any examples when you think this has happened to you recently? No one?
I'll make a comment. In one of the classes that I was taking, they were talking about anchoring and how it impacts negotiating for salary.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on a job interview or just talking to your boss, and it was saying how if you don't do your homework first, and a number of the things that you mentioned, you may not know what the budget is, you don't know what the constraints are for the person that you're making the ask to. So if you put a number out there that's far beyond what that person is able to do, it essentially shuts you down. So if the person can only pay, I don't know, $40,000 for the job, and you come in and say, well, I'm looking for $50,000, then that kind of puts you on the offensive, and it sort of ends your negotiation. So it was just a focus on making sure that you do your homework and that you understand what the other factors are, so that when you are making your request, you're not outside of what that person may be looking for or expecting.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good example. Salary negotiation is where this happens a lot. Either you as the potential employee are anchored because you have a friend that works at Xerox and they're making 60,000. So that's when you're going to ask for that because you're anchored with that number because you know someone who does the same thing. But not, and forgetting that obviously every organization is different, and just like you said, Melissa, every budget is different, and it just, for whatever reason, they're not going to be able to pay that. And as the hiring person, they might be anchored as well. They might say, no, this is all it is, and they may not even want to look outside of that because maybe it is possible for them to hire you for more, but they might be anchored, and it's like, nope, I'm not even going to bother looking because that's such a ridiculous number. But maybe they should go do some research and go, well, actually, I see that the market has changed. And so,
They also talked about using a technique where, let's say that you know that the range is between 40 and 45, then perhaps the number that you present might be 45.7 or 45.5, so that puts you above. So they were saying how, like, the decision maker may be anchored in 45,000, but if you're going just a little bit above that, that gives some negotiation room so that they can offer a lower number and that you can both walk away.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because if you know their anchors,
yes,
you're actually leaning into that anchor, right? And you're giving them a strategic direction so they can move toward a new anchor, right? So move toward it. So it's just something to consider when you're having, I think that's a great way to keep it open. And suggestions on how to overcome them. Let me see, there's a study that found that people asking that if you ask someone to consider the opposite of the anchor, I think this might not work with salaries, but maybe asking them to try to get them to think, why are they anchored in that? So to directly ask them, this might work with the banana instance, right? Obviously you're not going to ask them that for a salary, but there are sometimes to try to figure out exactly, like, thinking about, why are you anchored in that? Oh, well, because I read this information. Well, actually, then if it comes again, we've talked about trusted messengers, where they get the new information, will that change their point of view? But again, it's something, sorry, what?
That was my point. Change perspective.
Yes, exactly. Change their perspective. So we also have to understand their perception of potential for harm. How does this change that you're suggesting? Will it affirm their identity or undermine their identity? Is it going to require like a mind shift for them? Might the success of this idea diminish their status, right? Or their expertise? So we just have to consider these things. Again, consider who you're talking to, their audience. And if you can understand the way that they potentially perceive harm, you can also identify the ways to sort of offset that if they start opposing your idea. Remember that people react with, we aren't rational. We decide with our guts, decide with our gut emotions when we make decisions many times. So if that information is making them feel badly, they're going to find a reason to justify why it's wrong or untrue. Again, this is the work of Kurt Gray and Chelsea Shine, which I think we've shared this with you before, people's perception of harm. So you need to help them see the benefit of your idea, right? To talk about the project and give them an explanation so they don't see the harm, they get past their anchor, and offering them a way to show how the world will be different once this new program has come into effect. And we need to affirm their role within the organization. I think we all know that. Praise them. This doesn't mean sucking up, but finding a way that whatever they do aligns with showing how their role in this new program or situation is going to be better. I think somebody mentioned that earlier, like letting their team know it's going to be better because this and this is going to happen. So appealing to them, thanking them, making sure, again, not sucking up, but it's a way to sort of activate the power of affirmation, but is always, always express appreciation, and be sincere about it. That's one thing I will say about working with in our center. I think we're small, there's only 5 of us, but we're very cognizant of each other's roles because our roles overlap, but we all have our own strengths, and making sure that we elevate those who have those strengths and are always super appreciative openly with each other. And I think that's a really important thing to like genuinely admire and appreciate each other on your team to make your team stronger. And finally, you know, speaking to worldviews, we've talked about this before. You remember like we talked about worldviews, identities, and perceptions, and how some people have the individualistic worldview, some have a more collectivist view. So when you're talking to them, know where they're coming from. And this will help you when we go into scripting our actual pitch to them for our idea. So back to the worksheet. What can you thank them for? You might fill this out. You can, if you just want to take, we don't have that much time left. So if you just want to take one of the people that you're thinking of and see if you can answer these things. I know you might not be able to do it just sort of on the fly. You might really have to do your homework when you go to pitch this, but see if you can start to fill in this grid with the people's help that you're going to need, their anchors, their perceived harm, what makes them proud. So just take a minute. It's 42. Let's just take 3 minutes and do this, because I know this is a huge thing that you could take probably all afternoon doing, but let's go to 11:45. So I'll give you just 3 or 4 minutes on this. Okay, so finally now you've got your concrete idea, you've got your strategy, you've figured out exactly what you need done, you've done all this background work, understanding the mind of the person you want to bring on board. And so now it's time to script and present your idea. So there's 8 tools we have to help you present and script your ideas. First is tell great stories, which we've talked a lot about that, and hopefully now you know how to do great stories. Make your ideas small. Present your ideas old rather than new. Use gains and losses frames. Invoke emotion with intention. Don't present your ideas permanent. Create specific asks and use because. So now telling great stories, you all know the importance of this, because if we can get people to into our story, which this morning there were some great stories where we actually were transported. I think the Syrian refugee one, we were transported into that. Even I felt the one when he was talking about the girl in the pain, you know, was having all that pain, and that helps us gain new perspectives. And that's why stories are so important. If we can tell a compelling story, people are less likely to counter argue. And I think that's one of the big things we have to remember. If our story is compelling and fascinating enough, if we've drawn them in, if we've used that data point to tell the story, they are drawn in, they're less likely to counter argue, and they don't feel like they're being persuaded, right? It's like they actually feel the need to want to help and to care, right? So if you can bring story in, tell the story, how the people are going to be affected by the problem you're trying to solve. Or you could tell the story of like how this organization is going to be better after we succeed. Remember, that's one of the stories we can tell. And again, data, yes, we want to use data, but we don't just want to give them data. We need to, the research suggests it's more effective to tell the story than the individual data points, right? You use it to illustrate. There's a saying that Matt, and I can't remember it, something about the forest and the trees. So I'm not going to use his metaphor, but we want to make sure that we share the story of the communities and not just the data. I think I've said that enough. I'm going to move on. So while it's really tempting to present your idea as like this big, bold breakthrough, sometimes it's better to actually to present it as small, because big ideas can sometimes trigger feelings of inefficacy, meaning that your idea can seem so big that people may not see either how their individual action can help, or they can be overwhelmed by it, right? So we want people, feelings of efficacy or like the belief that our action is going to make a difference is critical for moving people forward. So pitch it as small and focus on like the specific changes rather than this huge, big new idea. Make your idea feel old. Is Brendan still here with me?
Yes.
Okay, everybody's so quiet. Am I in the right presentation mode? Is anybody chatting to me?
No questions or right now, and we can all see it well.
You can see the slide, the number 3.
Yep.
Okay, just everybody's so quiet. All right, so making your ideas feel old. And that was one of the questions in the beginning. Do you make it sound like it's a new idea? But this is, and it might sound like, why would you do that? That sounds like opposite of what I really should be doing. But if you can identify where other people have done this or where they've experimented with this idea, and I think the idea of, like if this program was successful elsewhere is a great way to like diminish people's fears that there's going to be an uncertain outcome. So if you can say, we've tried this elsewhere or somebody else is doing a similar thing. This is, if you guys read Switch, which I think was one of the books on our list, that they use the term bright spots. So it's basically sort of a shorthand for the area of research called positive deviance, which asks us to look for solutions that are working in similar organizations and then apply that to ourselves. So if you can look for bright spots and not like, this is this big, bold idea, and it's like, nope, this has been done, similar organization, and they had these results. So the other thing we can do is when we're scripting our idea is to use gains and loss frames to manage their uncertainty. So a loss frame is basically when you focus your argument on what's going to be lost if action isn't taken. The gain frame is focused on what there is to gain. So an example would be, so a gain frame would be like, get a monthly mammogram so you will have more treatment options if they discover if there's anything discovered, like they discover you've got a tumor. So that's a gain frame. Get that monthly mammogram so you'll have more options if they discover anything. Or a loss frame would be, if you don't get a mammogram, you won't have as many treatment options if they discover something, right? So there's something called prospect theory. This is Dan Kahneman. The idea of prospect theory suggests that we're going to do more to avoid pain than create gain. And that we prefer certainty over uncertainty, which I think it's sort of the devil you know. And we're all experiencing that now with COVID, this huge time of uncertainty in all aspects of our lives, in health, in our work, in our school for ourselves, school, university, school for our children, right? And a lot of times we do sort of go with, oh, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Ellen, I had a question about number 3. Can I ask a question?
Which was,
do we not have time?
No, I do. What, making new ideas feel old? Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried that on a couple of occasions, suggesting like, our peer and benchmark institutions trying to make some curriculum change or something. Our peer and benchmark institutions are doing X, we're very close to X. It wouldn't be hard to move all the way to X. And that seems to have actually come across as offensive to UF administrators. People said, well, we're not the University of Texas. We're not UNC Chapel Hill. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. We're not. They're much better schools than we are. But the idea that this is very puzzling to me, because the private school that I used to teach at talked obsessively about peer and benchmark institutions. And I know it's a part of the way we think about the Drive for 5 and all of that sort of stuff. So I wonder if anyone here can shed any light on this idea that what seems quite commonsensical, the idea that like, hey, someone we admire is already doing something very close to what we could be doing. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's take a page out of their successful book. Can you help me understand why that would seem insulting to administration at UF? Does anybody have any insights into that?
Trish, I'm going to jump in. It's interesting to hear you say that because within advancement, we do the comparison thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We actually look at
it's not uncommon
peer institutions and benchmarks. So there are corners of UF where that may be embraced. As to why it's not been received well with in the administration you've worked with, I can't say. But
my area,
I know at our college we do that as well. And maybe it's understanding, because when you say administration, obviously you're referring to certain people, not the entire administration, but you know, what their anchors are. I'm sorry, somebody else was going to speak up. I don't need to talk.
I was saying in student affairs, we'll get incomplete benchmark comparisons, like used to kind of establish, so I'll say the term we said, like an anchor you already have. So for example, if you want more staff, you might say, the average number of staff per student at our benchmarks is this, you know, and it's higher, so we're short-staffed. But the follow-up question is, well, can you show that you aren't delivering the same level of service because of that lower staff? Otherwise, the counter argument would be, congratulations, you are more efficient than your peers.
Well, that's always that's always the problem, is you show you're doing well and they're like, well, yeah, so therefore you don't need any more resources. Yeah, it's, I feel like somehow when I mentioned these other schools, maybe it's because they're not in the SEC, I don't know. You know, I mentioned other schools that I think are reasonable comparisons, and I wonder if this was somehow an anchor that I didn't know about, that like explicit comparisons to the way other schools operate are bad. Of course, we're all doing it, but we would never want to admit that we judge ourselves against other institutions. Like, is that some, I don't know. We can't solve this question. We can't solve this problem here. This was something that I got a very hard pushback on, and I wanted to see if it was because I was just stupid or insane, but it sounds like maybe that's not the case. Something else is going on that I just don't know about. Anyway, we can move on. I just had a question about that.
I have several thoughts, but I could like talk to you offline about like several ideas of what you might try. Oh, I can see my chat. Brandon said something. Comparing, yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother philosophical discussion. I'm gonna move on. But Trish, I had a few ideas of maybe like coalition building, things you might want to try, but we can talk about that offline. Okay, so where was I talking about? Oh, gains and losses, right? So how you frame it, like the devil you know better than the devil you don't. So this is part of prospect theory, which helps us understand how people respond to choice and uncertainty. A gain frame message works best when it is associated with certainty. So for the breast cancer example, so you get your monthly exam, you are going to have more options if they discover something. So it is certain that you will have more options if you do a, it says monthly mammogram, sorry, that's I typed that wrong, yearly. I said that wrong. Anyway, so if you say, so that's a gain frame, right? When it's associated with certainty. A loss frame messages are more effective when your outcome is less certain, right? So anyway, that's all in thinking fast and thinking slow. So using emotion with intention, we've already talked about this. When we're pitching, we know we have to think about which each emotion has a different action associated with it, a different behavior that we can get, that we can elicit from the listener. So use those emotions intentionally. I'm just going to sort of skip through this because we've only got a few minutes left. Anyway, so this is more on the worksheet. I'm not going to stop now because I want to make sure I don't want to cut into your lunch. You've probably got plans. You're all going out to lunch somewhere, right? No. Having nice long lunches. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen anymore. Anyway, so this is where you can start scripting your ideas. This is where, when you go to make that pitch, so after lunch, when Anne works with you, she'll be talking about how to actually have these meetings and how to work once you've sort of got that, I hate to say elevator pitch, but basically that's the idea. And you've got all this in there. This is just, anyway, this is just a worksheet that will help you start scripting that talk that you're going to have with whoever the person is. Another thing you can do is make sure you try to present it. It's not a permanent solution. Let's just try it, right? It's a one-time experiment. Let's just try it for X amount, like give it a time limit. And so that way you're asking for like a smaller commitment from them. And again, I keep talking about abstraction. So give them direct asks, right? I need these 3 things from you. I need these 2 things. I would like to see this one thing happen, right? So give them that, you know, the thing you're advocating for, give them that ask. And make sure when you're doing the ask that it's within their power to do, it's something they want to do. In other words, it's going to affirm their identity. It is actionable, right? Can you help me get 100 boxes moved from this warehouse to that warehouse, right? Like it's going to be actionable. Whatever it is you're asking to do, once those boxes are moved, that's going to further my cause, right? So then I'll be able to use whatever paper's in there to do whatever I need to do, right? It gets you one step closer to your reality. And then also your ask will help build your relationship with that person, right? Your strong ask is going to like help build the relationship, especially if you ask them, if you come to them saying, I need help, you're giving them an opportunity to help you, which research shows that makes them like you more because you've come to them to say, I need your help. And so they want to help you. And so then that helps the relationship, builds a stronger relationship. And now this is the strangest research, but we always share this because this is true. Well, this was shown in research, so I'm sure, whatever, take it as you will. But it was a now famous experiment. And what she did is a Harvard researcher, and she had, people were waiting in line for the copy machine, right? And everybody's in line, and someone comes up and cuts the line, and they either said, excuse me, I have 5 pages to copy. Can I use the Xerox machine? Or they said, excuse me, I have 5 pages to copy. Can I use the Xerox because I need to make more copies? So people, if you just came up and said, excuse me, can I use the machine? People wouldn't let you do it. If you came up and said, excuse me, I need to make, I have 5 pages, may I use the machine because I need to make copies, 95% of the people agreed to let them in line. So even though everybody needs to make copies, that's why I'm in line, but because they use that word because, right, it sounds ridiculous, but it let people cut in line. So research suggests that people answer positively, just sort of a mindless response if we say because. So it's just something to keep in mind. You can test it out for yourself. So anyway, so what is your ask? Is it actionable, within their power? And will it build your relationship? Is it something they want to do or can do? And can you put because in there? Research shows it works. So to review, these are the 8 tools. It totally worked for me. I love that because I'm about to miss my flight. Exactly. See? It was also the tears. Yes, but you see, it's funny. Most people, first of all, yeah, I love that. They're just like, can I cut in line? I need to go. But like saying, because I'm about to miss my flight, you gave them that reason. And they're all probably going to miss their flight too. But because you said that, that's great. So we can all test this, do our own research. But anyway, so we've covered the 4 steps. You've got the worksheet. You can work through it later. I think these tools are great to help you build that effective strategy when you are going to either talk to, your manager, your team, colleagues, whoever you need to get on board, and apply these principles. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm so excited. It seems like I had Zoom the whole way through. All right. Any questions about this? Oh yeah, about the social media. So it's going to be at the end. So we're going to go to lunch now till 1, which is when Anne comes on. And I think hers will be like an hour and a half or 2 hours. So at 3, if she ends before, I'll sort of keep monitor. But basically when she's done, which should be around 3, if not before, I'll go over final projects again, any questions. And then the social media is, it's going to be about 30 minutes, Trish, and it's focused on how to use the social media as in your profession. So not if you're trying to buy ads for your organization or promote your department, but this is more personal use of like some tips and tricks for your personal use of either Twitter. I focus mainly on Twitter, but I will talk about some other platforms as well. And just some things you can do to try to build your influence or your status as a researcher or a faculty member or a person in this whatever space you are in. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, have a great lunch, and I'll see you guys. Well, Anne will see you guys back here at 1 o'clock.
Particularly among very conservative members of Congress. And so the leaders of the communications team decided that we would overcome that by building more relationships on Capitol Hill. And so I found myself roaming the halls of Congress several days of every week, often with the people that we were funding, and meeting with members of Congress and really building those relationships and helping them develop a new understanding of what the foundation was. And that project went on for about 6 years and continues and was successful in turning around a really negative perception among conservative policymakers about the foundation. In fact, some were so antagonistic to the foundation that they were actually introducing legislation to increase the amount of money that we were required to pay out every year so that we would be forced to spend ourselves out of business. And so we were able to turn those members around and demonstrate our value to them and develop some really warm and rewarding relationships. So I'm very proud of that. And so what we're going to share, what Jack and I are going to share with you today is very much informed by that experience, but it's also informed by the opportunity that I've had since I came from that position to the University of Florida to learn from scholars like Jack Berry, who is going to co-present this session with me, and Annie Neiman, and all of the incredible research that we have available to us. And so I've been able to take that framework and bring in insights from academic research to really reinforce it. So what we're going to share with you, we have used many times to gain support for ideas among influential people. And I think you'll see that it nestles very well with the framework that you learned this morning about how to build support for your ideas. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleague Jack Berry to introduce himself, because he's joined us for a couple of these conversations. I don't know that you've had the opportunity to formally meet him.
Yeah, hey everybody. I've joined a few times. It's cool to see you folks getting towards the end. So I think I'm going to introduce myself really early. So I will again. Currently, my title is Postdoctoral Research Associate at the Center for Public Interest Communications at the University of Florida. Or a better way to introduce myself, which we'll talk about later in this presentation, is the job I do is to create research at the intersection of social science and communications, providing actionable advice to organizations and policymakers shaping our world. So we'll talk more about ways of introduction that we think are effective later on.
Terrific. Thanks, Jack. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to dive into this. As I'm doing that, do any of you have questions or reflections about what you learned this morning, the Building Support for Your Ideas framework?
Also, feel free to use the chat if you want to. I'll be monitoring the chat.
Great. Thanks, Jack.
Except when I'm speaking.
Great. Any questions about this morning, or shall we just go ahead and dive in? Okay, great. I also want to acknowledge that I know that many of you have real content expertise in this area, and I invite you, and Kim, I'm looking at you, where you've got contributions to this to please don't hesitate to join in and share your expertise with this group. So we want to start by thinking about what you're working on, what you're working toward. And I'd like you to think about what you need to be successful that you don't have right now. And you may have identified this in the session this morning. It could be a budget for a particular project. It could be time to work on something that you haven't had because of other responsibilities. It could be a grant that you've been working on. So I'd like you to take a minute and think about something you need to be successful that you don't have right now. So we're going to, I just realized, because I'm screen sharing. So we'd like you to go into groups and talk about this and identify as specifically as possible something that you need to do better work that you don't have right now. So I'm going to exit out of this, and that should give me, okay, great. So we're going to send you into small groups for about 5 minutes and bring you back at 1:15. So we want you in your small groups. Please go ahead. Was that a question? Okay. We want you in your small groups to identify something that you need to do better work that you don't have right now. So it looks like you were in breakout rooms this morning, so we're going to send you back into those breakout rooms.
Received one of those pop-ups that say go to your breakout room.
You did not?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
I did not either. I'm still in the main session. I didn't have a pop-up.
Okay, I see a couple of you who are unassigned, so I'm sending you now.
Thank you.
And when you're presenting, you can't see the chat, is that right?
That's correct. back, everybody. What did you come up with? What are some of the things that you identified that you need that you don't have right now? Karen, you're right in my line of sight, so I'm going to ask you to tell me.
So for mine, I think I need a better knowledge of the audience and to understand what their anchors are and their worldview to be best able to get the message across to them.
So what is the specific thing that you want to ask for that you don't have right now?
Well, I think, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know, is there something specific that you need? Like you're going to use all of that information to get what you need. So how are you, what is the thing that you want? Is it another person on your team? Is it some resources to attend a conference or?
Okay, so I want them to take an action. So yes. It's farm owners.
Okay,
yeah,
and what do you?
Things.
Okay, and what do you want this farm owner to do that they're not doing right now?
Screening their farm workers for COVID.
Okay. Okay. So what I want you to think about, and what I would like all of you to think about for this project, for this module, in the last module, you were really thinking about a big idea that you're trying to gain support for. Now you're thinking about something that you need to be able to implement that idea. And you're thinking about the person that can do that. So for example, you might be, given that you really want farm owners to get them to do a better job of screening and tracing, you might want to then think about talking to a funder about providing some resources to make it easier for them to do that. So what if, for example, you were going to go and meet with Publix to ask them to fund this kind of increased testing and screening. So that, so that they could send so that you could provide all of these farms with temperature monitors and other kinds of contactless tools that would be for them to do that. Does that make sense?
Thanks.
Great. And also, I love that you're doing this. Thank you.
It's based on a real project. So I switched from my former tuberculosis project, which is not a hot topic right now, to COVID.
Yeah, I bet those skills are really transferable. Melissa, what did you come up with?
I think for me, it's similar to what she said. It's just finding more like, I mean, I think in order to do what I was thinking about doing, I need to have a better understanding of how the process works and who's really involved. But I think from the session today, I learned that it's important to understand what the anchors are for the people that you're trying to present to. More like, I understand why it's important to me, but why would it be important to them? Mm-hmm. So this session really made me kind of think a little bit more about maybe understanding more about finding a way to present this so that it matters to the people that I'm asking to. For me, I think it's going to be more of a time commitment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think understanding what matters to them, like what would be something that they would see as harmful, or something that would be like resistance. So mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what I need to really identify.
So
just the way it's set up now. Oh, I'm not muted. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
Children, sorry.
No, you're totally fine. I have a very active Chihuahua, Jack Russell, who you're probably going to hear from a lot when the landscaping team shows up later. So totally know it. We're all dealing with it. So Melissa, I really want to urge you to think about something. What are you using that information for? So for example, our team launched a gathering called Frank 7 years ago, and it brings together people who are at the front lines of social change from all over the world. And when we first started organizing Frank, I very quickly realized that Frank was a conference that needed to happen, but I couldn't do it by myself. And I was able to do some fundraising to get it to happen, but I also needed help. And so I had to go to my executive associate dean and ask him for 50% of the time of a colleague who I deeply respected and who I knew was incredibly talented in this area. And so that was the thing that I was asking him for. Was the time from that person who actually reported to him. And so this is a framework that I used in that conversation to be able to get his support for that. So I really want to urge you to think about a specific resource that you need, part of somebody's time, a budget approval for something specific. So you're going to be taking everything that you learned this morning to be able to ask for that. But I really want you right now to be thinking about what it is that thing that you need. How are you using all of that to get something you need?
And
so
can you speak to those of us who feel like the thing that we need is authority? Do we really need that? Is there something else we can be doing? Or do you feel like, yes, for some projects, you really do have to have authority and you need to be the one driving that bus?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much. That may be one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked. So I have my official answer to this and I have my rogue answer to this. And my rogue answer to this is you almost never need authority. And my other rogue answer to this is I have discovered in academia that if you are willing to work harder and longer and more persistently than anybody else, you can exhaust anybody who would actually oppose the thing that you're trying to do. So I think a lot of times we do think that we need authority for something, but the framework that Ellen shared with you this morning, I think shows you how you can really build that informal community of practice within your organization, where you build a community of the willing who are able to work without necessarily being anointed to go forward and do it. And I think that is one of the privileges that we experience in an academic environment. Now, is that a privilege that is experienced in the same amount universally across the university? No, it's not, and that's something that we need to fix. But I think it's also true that in most cases, you can get a lot done without asking for permission. And what you really are asking for not is permission to do the thing, but that additional resource that you might need to make it possible.
Anne, I'm here for that answer. That's a great answer. I'm here for it. I love it. Thank you.
Can I just chime in?
For sure.
This is Trish speaking. I have my video off because I'm far from my router. I love this question also, and I also really like the answer. And I think that you are correct that in the academy, the combination of people's limited bandwidth and the very unclear, somewhat flat structures of hierarchy mean that you can, if you're willing to work harder and take the lead and do things, you can accomplish a lot of things that might be difficult in a more structured business environment. I would have to say, though, that that is true until it very abruptly stops being true and you get told you need to stay in your lane. You are X, you are not Y, you don't have decision-making power here, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there is a way in which the collegial, non-corporate vibe that we like to have in the academy invites the kind of sort of leadership mentality that you're describing, Alex, and that everyone likes it until all of a sudden it challenges some way of doing business that people really don't want to have challenged. And then it can be, all of a sudden things can change very quickly. And I think part of the issue is that because structures of hierarchy are quite informal in many of our workplaces, when the fact that they even exist is revealed by someone working harder or having a better idea or being able to put in more time than someone else, people tend to be extremely defensive about the fact that you got out of your lane and now you need to get back into it. And I would also just say, I think this is a gendered and racialized thing, just, you know, saying.
I agree that it is absolutely gendered and it is racialized. I think that it is also true that the tools that you learned this morning about how to gain support for your ideas, about how to gain that buy-in, I think it are really useful and important. I think it can be dangerous always to think in generalities. And I think when it comes to you and your specific situation, it's always important to use the tools that we are giving you to be as specific about thinking about whose support you need, what is important to them, how you are asking for support in a way that that also offers benefits to others. One of the things that you really heard about this morning was really thinking about the thing that you need in a way that offers value to the others around you. And thinking in that way, working in that way, won't work every single time, but it can certainly allay some of that sudden you're in the wrong lane thing if you are continuing to think about it from the perspective of providing value to others. Thank you. This was a really great discussion. So now I want you to think about who might help you get the thing that you need. And a lot of times when we need something, we immediately think about going to a supervisor, but that person may not necessarily be the person who can get you what you need. For example, you might want to think about working with an elected official. Many of us in our work find that working with elected officials, particularly if you're working on particular kinds of social change or funding requests, can be very effective. Oh my gosh, Jack, I totally forgot about the poll. We should launch that poll.
I was just about to interrupt you and just mention it because it's going to be related to these type of influentials.
Yeah, let's go ahead and launch that.
The poll asks, we'll launch it. We'll see how it goes. It asks if you've met with an influential and asked for something, how did it go? And there's a bunch of answers. So I launched it. Can you folks see the poll?
Yes.
Cool. So we'll let that.
Can we re-elaborate on what an influential would be?
Sure. It could be an administrator. It could be an elected official. It could be a funder. It could be somebody who is in your area of work or expertise, somebody who is in a position to help you by extending their influence on your behalf. Does that help, Alex? Okay, great.
All right. Did everyone get a chance? Looks like the numbers are pretty much close.
Yeah, this is great. So got some of what I asked for is the strongest answer, followed by got everything I asked for. Love that. So almost all of you got some of or everything you asked for. A couple of you have never asked, and some of you have gotten none of what you asked for. So, but nobody says that they're BFF and I was really hoping. I always hope somebody's going to say yes to that, because then I feel like we can just turn the whole workshop over to them and have them take over.
We're done.
Great.
In the chat, Anne, Sean makes a point where where's the option for I got more than I asked for.
Yeah, I mean that half sarcastic but half serious, you know, like you ask for input or support for an idea and they say, I need you to go back and research, you know, more of that, or now you're in charge of that. And I was like, that's not what I was asking for.
That's not what I wanted. Yeah, I got a whole lot more work to do. It should be an option next time. Great. Anything else in the chat that we should talk about?
Trish mentions, or if your supervisor may or may not want you to do the thing you want to do, or in the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
So that might be under the some category.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Okay, great. Well, then let's press on. I don't think I can end this poll.
I can end it.
Great. Okay, terrific. So let's press on to the next question. So is the person that you need to ask an elected official, are they, and Jack, for some reason, the poll results screen is right in the middle of my screen and I can't close it. Are you able to stop sharing the poll results?
Is that better?
No, that's a fun little glitch. Okay.
Do you have the little X at the top?
You know, when I'm in screen sharing mode, you lose like a lot of power. Okay. Or when you're in play mode. Zoom takes away a lot of functionality. But no, yes, thank you. That was helpful. Okay. Is it an administrator? So once you've kind of got that person in mind, what we want you to do is really become an expert in that person. So Jack, do you want to take us from here?
Yes, so really try to connect to that person. What might they care about to the thing that you want? What's in their interest? And I think this already came out in our discussion a little bit with who has authority. And one way to start thinking about this that we found effective is to start thinking about giving favors rather than asking for them. So kind of as a broad thing to think about. So we kind of recommend starting with their professional bio. So you target the person who you want to ask something of, or an influential of some type. Look at their professional bio. There's lots of info in here: education, work history. You might find connection to those things to them. You might find maybe a hobby even that they do. And this differs greatly for someone you don't know, if you're going to pitch an elected official, or someone who you might have a personal history with, but kind of some things to think about. But it also gives kind of your professional vision that they're presenting towards the world. What are they proud of? And this gives you insight into their values and connects you to their identity, which we'll talk about in more depth. For those in the academic sphere, you might find CVs, which can be very long. But on the other side, you might find some shorter kind of resume type things. So it really depends on what type of influential you're looking for. We also recommend following them on social media. Twitter is great, especially for academics now. A lot of them are on Twitter. LinkedIn is a great resource to kind of see kind of what they're doing on social media. And this does give you more of an insight into the way they want to be seen publicly, including things they don't want to be seen for potentially on social media can come across as well. So just be wary of that, but you will kind of see the way they're trying to present themselves to the world in general. And they're kind of building a professional space. I'd also recommend, we don't have Facebook on here, but Facebook can be a great way to follow people, including their individual page, or often if they're part of an organization, the organization has a page. Another thing is to set up a Google News search. So this, you can have an alert sent to your phone or your email or whatever about that person. And this might seem a little creepy at first, maybe if it's someone you know, like in the organization at UF, but especially if it's to someone maybe in an organization or making decisions. If you have a news alert set and you have a meeting scheduled for them, you might get a heads up on what they've exactly been up to recently. And you will be able to impress them and connect to what they're doing. If you have a name like mine, Jack Barry, which is a very generic name, and if you Google that, you're gonna find a lot of options. One thing to kind of get around that problem is to put someone's professional where they're working or the organization they're part of, then you can maybe get hits for that person. That's something I've come across as well. And so this also can help you connect to their values and things that they might see. You might be able to see what they're doing in the news, what award they won recently. But it also might show you things you might not want to know about their values or something different. So just something to be aware of, especially for dealing with academics or for folks at an institution that's producing publications. We really recommend kind of doing your homework with reviewing their publications and seeing kind of what they say. This might really give you more insight kind of into their values and what they believe. And also kind of related, if they produce any newsletters via an institute, via their organization, congressional leaders do this too. Sign up for those. Those can be really kind of an insight into who they are. You can always cancel these things too after you've worked with them or whatever. But we think it's a kind of a good way to get started. But definitely review their publications when you have the time. So what are you exactly looking for? And Anne has alluded to this before, earlier, kind of, you're looking for some of their values and things that they're interested in. So you folks have had a few conversations about underlying values and moral values and worldviews. So you really want to look for what might be behind what's driving their beliefs. So we're not going to go into quite as much depth here because you folks have done this before, but does anyone have any questions about kind of underlying values or worldviews or identities from the previous sessions? Conservatives are more focused on preserving the sacred, liberals more on fairness. Anyone have any questions on any of those? Oh, and we have a question from Kim about funders. Do we do this for big funders we want to pursue and look at CVs and pubs for any folks who we know who serve as proposal reviewers?
Sorry, that was a statement. Yeah, not a question.
Okay.
I was affirming that what you do sounds like a great idea, and it's something that we actually try to do in our office with looking at private foundations that we want to support UF.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really important to do that with funders, and knowing as much as you can about even their professional background before they were in that position, because it'll help you to understand kind of where their heart lies in some of these projects, and what their expertise, what kinds of expertise they're bringing to their decision making as well.
If I can, just a very short anecdote about this. Shobha knows this story because she was part of this process as well, but we had a proposal move forward to a foundation, and it was for a specific area, and it turned out the reviewer had formerly run like that area of the federal agency that used to give federal funding for that particular area of research, and so it was tough. We knew he was either going to love it or he was going to hate it. That was the one that I answered on the poll. We did not get what we asked for. But you got to keep trying.
Got to keep trying.
Yeah, I absolutely second this. Just some of my background is I worked at University of Connecticut, and we went for big grants at the State Department. So we got close to them and the ECA branch of the State Department, and just reading over their website and looking at their calls for the big grants, the more we knew, the better we could write that grant. And I've also worked in the social enterprise space with people trying to get impact funders. And the more you can find out about funders, the better. So I totally recommend doing your homework on this. Cool, so I think we're good for moving on from values and worldview. We probably kind of talked some of this stuff to death with you folks, but consider the egalitarian or individualistic. What can you kind of find out about them? And I think we shared this chart with you in the past with the different kind of worldviews. And the same with moral values. These are the ones we went over before. But we have even a deeper challenge for you. Are we at that section, Anne?
Yes, we are. Let's go for it.
So on the next slide, I think we are going to send you folks into, actually, Anne, are we going to send them into groups?
Nope,
or
we want you
are
to
we
do
going
this.
to send them on their own work?
Yep, you're going to do this on your own. You've identified a person, and what we want you to do is go and take 10 minutes to research this person using the tools and questions that we talked about. Google News, Twitter, looking at their professional bio, looking at their LinkedIn profile, maybe seeing what you can find among their publications, and go and see what you can go and learn about this person that can help you to think about what would make them interested in your ideas. So we're going to take 10 minutes. Jack and I are going to stay right here and be here to answer any questions that you have, and I'll stop screen sharing while you do this. But yeah, take 10 minutes and go and see what you can find. If you want to drop questions into the chat, that's great. And so it is now 1:47. So why don't we do this? Jack and I are going to stay on until 2 o'clock, and then at 2 o'clock, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll start again at 2:10. Okay? Sound good, everybody? Great. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am super excited to hear what you learned. So you can share what you learned either by raising your hand or by adding it to the chat. It's up to you, but we're really eager to hear what you found in your 10-minute deep dive into becoming an expert in the people whose support you need.
And I would say I learned a lot by finding very little about my person. Their CV was not available. They have no social media presence. Nothing at all. What this told me, and I'm not shocked because I know the person enough to know, they don't value those things. And when I'm coming in as a strategic communicator being like, we need all of these communication projects, they're not going to understand that. So I need to get on their level. Now, I did learn where their hometown is. I learned where they went to undergrad and internship and residency. So I feel like I can make a person connection with them. But I learned nothing else. But I learned a lot by knowing nothing.
That is such a fantastic insight. Because you go into that meeting talking about how we need to make ideas famous and all these things, and somebody who's got a deep aversion to all of that. So
they would hate that. Like, I'm not going to use the word analytics at all. I'll be using words like, this is a business strategy. I learned they really like business. Keep it really chill, like not big ideas. They're going to want to know about the finances. How much is this going to cost? How much time is it going to take? So it's unfortunate because I like to move very, very quickly. And I think they like to move a lot more slow and steady. So it was a fun journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just love the insight that sometimes what you don't find is as useful as what you do. Great.
That's awesome.
What else? Jack, do we have any additions in the chat?
Yeah, we just have one. We just have a new one. Sean says my person was recently hired VP, so I have her CV, dissertation, LinkedIn, which we reviewed as part of her hire.
Okay,
a lot of good stuff there.
So you have all that. And is there something a particular insight that you gained from all of that?
My pitches for our strategic plan and kind of how to advance it. So seeing her expertise in that area, which is fairly extensive. So I'm not teaching her how to do a strategic plan. I'm just showing her some insights into our institution, knowing where she's coming from. Also pulling her plans from those institutions has been really important.
That's great. And it also gives you an opportunity for that conversation to really affirm her identity as somebody who thinks that way. People are much more likely to engage with ideas after their own identity has been affirmed.
She's also very visible and promotes staff development, promotes professional engagement in associations, telling the student affairs story, so that tells us her plan will not be just an inside plan. It'll also be a PR facing plan.
That's great. That's a fantastic set of insights.
One thing that I found was actually really interesting. So I found that what I thought the person did or what their responsibilities were very different. So I've actually sort of shifted who I need to talk to and understanding what their scope is and who can actually help me accomplish what I'm doing. So it was great to learn about them, and that's still really important because they're ultimately a big part of what I'm trying to do, but knowing that, I don't want to talk to you per se if the person that really needs to make the decisions over here. Like, let me do some more research. So that was a really good thing that I was able to learn from this.
Awesome. That's really great. Good. Let this become a habit as you begin to engage with people whose support you need, whose relationships are important to you, really having the opportunity to affirm their identity, to give them sincere compliments for work that's been well done, to know if something has happened that may create a soft spot or an awkward spot in a conversation. All of this is really important and useful for your conversations with people. Whose support and engagement is important to people.
and we have a poll too, which we realize finding their moral values is difficult. And an answer to this poll is unsure. But I am curious, we're going to launch a poll based on that, on your person. So I'm curious what you folks found regarding their moral values. So you can choose conservative, liberal, not strongly one or the other, or unsure. And if you do know this, this does allow you to reframe your argument or how you're presenting yourself to this influential person. Yeah, and unsure or not strong one way or the other, that's a fine answer. Just, it's better to be sure on this topic. And can you see the results of the poll coming in? It looks like we've had 6.
Yeah, looks like we're just missing a couple of responses, but let's see which one is the leading one.
Looks like unsure might be, which, you know, given 10 minutes of research and not wanting to typecast someone, that makes sense.
For sure. And it's easy to get that wrong. Also, and we urge you to, as you think about whether they might be conservative or liberal, not necessarily to look, not necessarily to make assumptions, but to look at where you see particular values from either liberal perspectives or conservative perspectives represented in their comments or in their work. Great. Okay, well, let's end this poll and continue on, because now, yep, unsure, definitely the highest one. Okay, so now we want to talk with you about, now that you know this about them, what kinds of stories about your work or your field or the people your work benefits are going to resonate with this person? You learned so much about what is important to them. Alex, even figuring out where somebody's hometown is can really help you to think about what kinds of stories might be meaningful to that person. And then you want to think, oh,
this
go ahead.
is so off topic, but what are your thoughts on how LinkedIn lets you see who viewed your profile? I don't like that, because just now I looked up this person's profile. I'm like, I don't want them to know I was looking them up, because I feel like they might be like threatened by like what's going on here. So do you have any insight as to why the heck they do that?
I think they see it as a way to get more people to post their own content on LinkedIn, because people want to know who is looking at their content, particularly if there's somebody who may be seeking a job or who's using LinkedIn as a way to sort of build their professional influence.
Yeah, to quote the young people, I feel like it makes people look thirsty when they look at the other folks' profiles. And I'm like, it makes me not want to look at somebody.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, I agree. LinkedIn is, yeah. And you can also, the other part of LinkedIn's business model is that you can pay, I think it is $70 a month to make it so that you can turn that off.
Yes, I'm aware of that premium feature. I'm not at that premium level quite yet, but yeah, at least they have that.
No, and I don't see myself ever having $70 a month for that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what you're going to ask of them. Now, when you ask something of somebody, you want to ask for something that is actionable. You know, and I was continuing to think more deeply about the question you asked this morning, Alex, about permission. And asking somebody necessarily for permission is not especially actionable, because you've got permission. Now what? it doesn't necessarily, unless it comes with the specific commitment of resources that you need to make it happen, even permission can be meaningless. So you really want to ask for something that they can do. If it's an elected official, you know, asking them to come and visit your lab, or asking them to write a letter of support for a funding request, or a congressional record statement. If you are working with university relations and Mark Kaplan's team, they may engage you in some specific legislative requests. But you want your asks, no matter who they're of, to be actionable. It has to be something that they're in a position to do. Erica, you had that great insight that the person that you were focusing on wasn't actually able to do the thing that you needed to do, and you needed to focus on somebody else. So there are two reasons that you want to really make sure before you ask that they're in a position to do the thing you need, because the first is you don't want to make somebody feel powerless by asking them to do something that is beyond their power. And the second is you're not going to get it if they can't do it. So you want to make sure they're in that position. This is the super upper level of asks, is try to think about something that is also going to be helpful to them. What, in all this work that you've done, figuring out what their values are, what's important to them, what they want from their career, how does the thing that you are asking for make their lives better, advance their objectives, advance their career? And when you work from this mindset, the superpower of this is that all of your asks turn into favors and value that you generate for others. So instead of pulling down favors, you are actually offering them up, which is a really fantastic way to build relationships. And also just a really great way to live your life too.
Oh, Anne, one question on that, just back to Alex's original question about authority.
Yeah.
And, do you think it relates to that previous question? Like if it would help, is this a way around that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's also a point, it also responds to the point that Trish was making as well. That, you know, if you're working in the interest of those who might try to stop you in your tracks, they may be less likely to do that. So they also have to actually know how to do the thing that you are asking them to do. So you may sometimes have to do some managing up to make sure that they have the skill to do the thing that you want them to do. And it has to be legal, which is sort of a duh, right? But it's remarkable how often we find ourselves in workshops and talking about this very thing, and find people planning to ask for things that they actually can't legally ask for. And this happens, Jack, you had an example of this in the context of your State Department funding.
Yeah, with the grant, it was really specific, which you couldn't use any of the money for any alcohol purchases at all, even for like a party with all the, you know, big wigs that are involved in the program. So, you know, otherwise it wouldn't have been illegal, but because it was illegal by the grant, we couldn't do it. So just knowing those fine prints of in what you're asking for is really key.
Yeah, this is really important too. And this is why if you are meeting with elected officials, it's really important to work with the university's government relations team as well, because there are specific guidelines that we have to adhere to as a state-funded institution in terms of how we engage with our elected officials.
We run into that with fundraising too, because we can extend certain things to people that some folks can accept, but then other folks can't accept. And it can be something as simple as attending a football game in the President's Suite, but many foundations won't allow their people to do that because it seems like they're playing favorites. So So it's important to ask, like, is it that you can't? Because we were asking one person repeatedly and they kept declining. And then finally I was like, is it your organization's policy? And they said yes. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now we know and we can do something else to make you feel special.
Exactly. We encountered this when I worked for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We would occasionally, if we had a group of grantees in town, we would host a reception and invite all the congressional staffers of the offices that represented them. And one of the things that one of the constraints that we had to work within was what was called the finger food exemption. The staffers were only allowed to eat food at a reception that was externally funded if it could be eaten with their fingers. So we couldn't have any sit-down dinners or anything that required a fork or a spoon. So it's useful in these spaces to make sure that you're really working within the constraints and policies within an organization. And Kim makes a great point, ask if you have to. So what I'd like to do now is, let's see, it is 2:27. So let's break into groups for about 7 minutes and come back together at 2:35. And let's identify some specific asks for the person that you've identified. So we are going to, oh, I have to stop sharing. Okay. So we're going to send you back into those breakout rooms, and I'm going to open the rooms now, and we'll bring you back at 2:35.
Our breakout room finished a little bit early, I think.
Welcome back. Brandon, you always have the best backgrounds.
Oh, thank you. I've started being a little bit more in the moment with them lately.
Oh. I particularly appreciate this one. Inside Out feels like the movie for COVID-19.
I don't know. I feel like I'd cry too much if I watched it right now.
My kids are really, it's one of their favorites, and we watched it again recently, and it was actually like felt really great. But they've also been watching Tangled a lot, which also feels very, very appropriate to the isolation in which we are all living here in COVID-19. And my daughter pointed out that the name of the city in Tangled is Corona. So.
Okay, then. Yes, my children have watched Hamilton about 10,000 times, so that's where my head's at right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. It looks like we've got most people. Let me just close all of the. Okay. Let me close the rest of the rooms so that everybody can come back. Yeah, we've also been enjoying a Hamilton revival in our house with my three little Schuyler sisters.
I love Hamilton, but my children have learned a way to make things that I really like obnoxious just by the pure repetition of it. You know what I mean? Like every second of the day. Like, enough.
Hamilton has much to teach us about strategic and unstrategic communication.
Indeed.
Talk less and smile more, Trish. Are you talking about Hamilton the play?
There's that. There's the whole idea of being in the room where it happened. There's a lot going on there in Hamilton trying to learn to be more strategic. He's totally an example of someone who just thinks like, well, I'm really smart, so everyone should do what I say. Burr is much more the sort of like, I I have nothing to say, but I'm here to make everyone feel really good. Washington emerges as the person who can sort of split the difference. I guess Jefferson too. But yes, I think the play has much to tell us, both that is actually informative and as a cautionary tale.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Thinking of the king.
Indeed. All right. So what are some of the asks that you came up with? And if you want to either drop them in the chat or
Can I volunteer someone from my group?
yeah.
Karen had a great idea that riffed off of what you had said, Anne. So.
Ooh, I want to hear more.
Well, thanks. So, just as my home landline is ringing, so you might hear some noise in the background. Sorry. Yeah, I still have a landline. I'm So after you provided some feedback to me, Anne, I thought that maybe I could reach out to CVS and ask them to donate some of the electronic thermometers that would be used for screening. So back again, my project was the farm workers. So
yeah.
That's the ask.
That is such a smart ask, and CVS has a foundation, which I bet Kim would be happy to tell you about.
She's really helpful, that Kim.
Yes, she is. So I think that's a really smart ask, and also it creates an opportunity for them to be visible about being part of the solution right now. So, and among a community of people who are extremely vulnerable. So it's very consistent with their mission around being a space for health. So great, I love it. Nice. What else did you all come up with? This is my favorite part. And anybody else is welcome to pull a Kim and volunteer one of your brilliant team members.
Or we can call it voluntolding.
Yes, voluntolding. Hannah, what did you come up with?
Oh no. So I actually brought this up as a question to my group because I've been kind of struggling with who exactly would be a good influencer, or if it's not an individual, maybe it's a college or an office. That's because the program that I'm looking at is really just about getting more people enrolled in the program. So I don't know if it would be a good idea to go down the route of getting an influencer to enroll in the program and then using them as an example that a lot of people admire and they want to follow their footsteps and these things that, oh, that person is doing it, I want to do that too. Or the alternative, thinking about trying to get a college or a office to be completely enrolled in the program and say, hey, this is the first college where 100% of the staff and faculty are enrolled, something like that.
I think that the second one creates a really great opportunity for an ask that is mutually beneficial. It'd be really interesting to think about going to a college where there's a great overlap in terms of your interests, or even a unit on campus, like, for example, the Career Resources Center. And thinking about where some of those places, identifying a unit that has high touch across campus as a way of accessing, not only creating a prototype, but also accessing a lot of networks simultaneously. I love that. Great. Okay, we are quickly getting to the end of our period, so I'm gonna jump back into our presentation. And I'm so excited the way you all are thinking about this, though. This is really, really fun to hear. Okay. So now you've done all of the hard work. You've done your research, you figured out what your ask is. Now you're actually going to sit down and have the meeting with this person. And I realize that we have, let's see, about 10 minutes to get through this. So Jack, do you want to talk about introductions and what you do and why it matters?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as Anne said, you've come this far. It's the end of a long day, end of a where you're at. You've done all your research. So what do how do you get through this meeting that you have set up? So your introduction, you might have noticed when I first talked about my introduction, I told you my title, but that was kind of a little bit boring and didn't really get across what I did. Instead, I then did the second one, which was more, what do I do, rather than just what my title is. And we found that to be effective in trying to get some buy-in and so people can understand what you're doing, and focus on what you do and why it matters.
So we were going to practice this, but I think we should actually keep going. But we often use a format like this in the center when we're introducing ourselves. Hi, I'm Anne Cristiano. I work in the Center for Public Interest Communications. This means that I work with organizations around the world to help them apply social, behavioral, and cognitive science to really hard communications challenges. Which is way more interesting than, hi, I'm Anne Cristiano. I'm a clinical professor in the public relations faculty in the College of Journalism at the University of Florida, and I direct the Center for Public Interest Communications. Both of those gave you a lot of information. One of them had useful information in it.
Yeah, and Anne in the chat, Jennifer says, my title gives zero idea of what I actually do. And Alex retweets that. So it seems like that's hitting a chord.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing you want to do is really thank them as you are in this meeting. You've introduced yourself, and then you really want to affirm this person. You've done all of this research, so you want to spend some time thanking them for what they've already done that advances your work or that advances your field. Even if it's a colleague that you've worked with for a long time, really thanking them for the ways in which they may have supported your work. Now, this isn't always easy because there's a rule about this. Every time you thank somebody or every time you give somebody a compliment, it has to be sincere. You may not even like this person, but your expression of gratitude or your compliment has to be something that you really mean. So, and your own authenticity in this process is critical. First, for being a good human, but also because if you don't mean it, you won't remember it and it will come across as insincere. Jack, do you want to take it from here?
Yep, sure. So briefly, you want to describe why you're meeting with them. Don't make them guess.
Yeah, and that can simply be a foreshadowing. I'm here today because I'm starting a project and there's something specific I need that could really help this succeed, and I'd like to talk to you about how to make that happen. And if they don't know you, or even if they do, briefly reminding them or telling them what you do and who it helps. My department, my executive associate dean was my department chair before he was executive associate dean. He's known me for 10 years. But I still find that he's got so many different moving parts in the college that just reminding him who the center works on behalf of and the kinds of things that we do at the beginnings of our conversation really helps to kind of ground him in where I'm coming from. So it's easy to assume that people know this, but actually it's never wasted time to remind them. I think you know this lesson really, really, really well. I have started doing this as a habit and really thinking about, continuing to use my executive associate dean as an example, his passion and research area is political communication. So when I have an opportunity to talk about some of the work that we're doing that is informed by that, or where work from his field or his own research has been helpful to us, I make sure to tell that story. This is another place where all that research that you've done can be really, really helpful. So if you see that they've started a new initiative and you've got expertise or a resource that could be helpful to them, you might say, hey, I understand that you've started this new project around inclusion in the Greek system. I have some research I did on that for a project that I did a few years ago. I'd be happy to share that with them. If there are specific ways that you have something to offer them that you can be helpful to them, that can be a really nice way to lay the groundwork for your ask. And then you want to make that ask and be very explicit about it. And you will find that in most conversations, people are really waiting for this. And you, when somebody calls you at work, you're like, okay, what's your ask? What do you need? Like, you're waiting for it, and you're kind of, you want them to be direct about it, right? You want them to be clear about it. So remember the golden rule of asks, and do unto others as you would have done unto you, and make sure that your asks are clear and direct and that you get to it quickly. Then you want to identify how to follow up. I will say that I've had plenty of meetings that didn't go as I hoped that they would, but really great follow-up can correct a lot of that. And so even if you have a meeting where the other person talked about something that was completely off point, you have all of that content that they gave you is something that you can connect with. So as you're reading your daily news feed and you see an article that is about that off-topic thing that they mentioned, you can say, Jack, we were talking about X. I saw this article and thought of you. I hope you're well. It would be great to catch up soon. So being a wizard of follow-up, being really assiduous with your follow-up, really listening to all aspects of the conversation and not neglecting the things that seem off point is a way to really further your relationship and continue the conversation. That being said, if they say, yes, great, let's do it, then you really want to talk about, okay, how do we actually make this happen? Who do I need to talk to? How do I get the funds transferred into my account? Who do I talk to about who's going to take over the tasks that you're taking off my plate so that I can do this other thing? Really make sure that you, in that conversation, if you get the answer that you're hoping for, that you invest some time in actually figuring out with that person how to make it happen.
And I would just add also, don't be shy about following up, especially with academics. I was in a program, I was trying to get to the MIT Development Lab, which is inherently hard to reach. There are a bunch of academics who are difficult to reach, but I just kept at it, kept asking them, and eventually we were able to get a meeting with them. So you just never know, like what week it might hit their inbox and they might be buried that day or that week. And if you just keep trying again, is one thing I've found effective.
For sure. And I think sometimes when you are trying to reach somebody like that, that's really hard to get to, that's getting a lot of requests, that is backlogged in their requests or in their email, sometimes it can be really tempting to drop some passive aggression on them. And we have a phrase that we often use in the center, which is, well, cathartic. And that's our code for, it may feel good to drop some passive aggression on somebody who hasn't been responsive, but it never works. So continuing that solicitous, friendly, value-added follow-up is really, really important because people are busy and dealing with lots and lots of requests. So you've got this worksheet in Canvas. This is the anatomy of a successful meeting. I fill out this worksheet anytime I'm going into a conversation. Kim, I would imagine that there's something similar that you use in the foundation when you're going into a meeting. And doing this, being really well prepared with what you want for each of these 8 things, means that your meeting is a whole lot more likely to go well regardless of what happens. So when we were working on Capitol Hill, I would often find that the person that I wanted to meet with would say, hey, the office is really crowded today. Do you mind if we stand in the hallway? Or if I was trying to meet with the Congresswoman herself, you know, they might say, oh, I can meet with you, but let's do it while we're walking. I've got to go vote. And so if you hadn't prepared at this level, something like that could really throw you. But if you've done this level of preparation, regardless of what happens, you're ready, you know what's next for the meeting, and you're really in charge of this conversation. Well, you know, if you were to follow this, you know, like a script with every word, it might be really tedious. And so you need to practice with it so that it feels more conversational and more sort of natural, and you've got space in there to really listen to what this other person is saying. Using this framework is a really effective way to use those one-on-one conversations. And while this was designed for interpersonal conversation, we've used it on Zoom as well, and over phone conversations, and find that it works equally well. So I had hoped that we would have some time to run through this, but it doesn't look like we do, because I want to make sure that we have some time for your questions and observations. So let me stop sharing. Any questions or observations about what we've talked about today? Can you imagine yourself using this in your next meeting with either an administrator or somebody else whose support you need?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big question for me is that I found somebody like Alex who there was like nothing about them online. So determining a way to research someone without being intrusive to like people that might go back and say, hey, this person's asking about you, is a skill that would be worth refining, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brandon. So a couple of things that you can do in that case. If it is a funder, the University Foundation can be incredibly helpful, and we've experienced that many times. They often have great archives of articles that may not be available without a paywall, so that can be really helpful. They also often have extensive documentation of conversations foundation staff may have had as well. So the UF Foundation can be super, super helpful. If it's an elected official, Mark Kaplan's government relations team can be really, really helpful, and they'll want to be in the loop anyway. And again, they have access to lots of databases and things that, that may not be available otherwise. And if it's somebody that you're working with, an administrator that you're working with, I would say this is a long game. And now that you know what to look for, you can be listening to those things in your interactions and in others' observations about them over time as well. And really start to sort of collect that information in your brain. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just the term long game is worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions or observations?
And
Can we be sad that this is ending? This is our last session before we do the final presentations.
It is. It is. And Ellen has joined us to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I would love to hear one of your fellow participants was sharing some of her reflections on the program a little bit earlier. And I would just, if you have any reflections on the program or the experience, I know our team would love to hear them. And you certainly don't have to do them in a public forum like this. We're always happy to have those conversations, side conversations. And we will also, after we finish your final presentations, we will convene a focus group among those of you who are willing to participate to get your reflections on the experience. This has been a real transition for us. It's the first time we've conducted an entire Strategic Communications Academy in an online format. So that's been quite a pivot for our team. So we'll be really eager to hear your reflections on that as well, and the ways in which our team can grow as well. Okay. Well, not hearing any, not seeing any raised hands or hearing any observations. Ellen, I will turn it over to you. And to all of you, I can't wait for your final presentations. We are so eager to hear them and to see, to watch you get to show off.
Can you make me a host, Anne, in case you have to pop off?
You bet.
Thank you, Lisa. Oops.
Aw, thanks, Lisa.
I launched the wrong thing there.
It'll just take me a second to figure it out. Make sure I do that.
Then you just go to participants and next to my name.
There we go. That's so strange. It's not.
You made me a co-host.
There we go. Okay. Okay. You have the power.
Perfect. I have the power. Yay. All right. Well, the first thing I want to do is share with you the sign-up sheet. Are you all seeing it? Yes. Everybody has not signed up. Only half of you have signed up. So I'm going to drop the link in this chat right now. Please sign up for your time, the time you want to present. We're giving everybody, you've got a 30-minute block. The thing I really want to also encourage here is for you to log on and watch each other. So if you're presenting in the morning, if you can hang out for a couple sessions and watch your colleagues, that would be awesome, because we do have a like a assessment rubric in there, and it just to give them feedback. So what's kind of cool about doing it this way is you all will automatically get it recorded. So I'll be sending out a link, like a Zoom link for each day. But yeah, please go in there and make sure you sign up. Also, I spoke with someone yesterday, and wait, I think I sent this in the email. It may not be apparent in case you missed it, but in the module under session 4, I gave some examples from last year's projects. So if you're still sort of struggling, like, what's it going to look like and how do I do this? Am I sharing the right screen with everybody? Yeah, so final project examples from 2019. So there's 4 here, and I've got Gabe's in here, the one that Kim said was so good with the drumming.
Yeah, that was a great one.
I mean the band. I say drumming for band for the band show. Yeah. To get support for building the practice field for the marching band. So that is there. So if you, like I said, if you're still like unsure what's this going to look like, there's a range. It can be an actual TED Talk finished and polished, or you can do the way, I think the way Anthony did is he let us know, okay, this is who you are and this is how I'm going to address them and this is what I'm going to cover and here's my strategy. So it just depends on which way you want to handle it. But I think these are some good examples here. So let me stop sharing. All right, does anybody have any questions about the, are there any examples of non-talk final? Yes, Jennifer. So some of the ones on there are not done as TED Talks. I think 3 of them are actually. I think there's only one that actually is like more of a TED Talk. The rest of them are not. Is that, if that's what you mean, Jennifer, by non-talk final projects? I think that's what you meant. Yeah, okay.
I thought there were ones, I thought like that you could do like a Twitter campaign, and I feel like there would be product that you would have to show.
No. If you had actually already launched that campaign and were going to show us the results of it, absolutely. But it does not have to be that way. You can, if you're planning on doing something like a Twitter campaign or a social media campaign, what you would do is present it to us, the strategy that you took, like how did you answer the 4 questions? What stories are you telling? What's your campaign? What campaigns are you going to do? How are you going to implement it? What are your visuals like, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't have to actually show it. You could just explain it all to us, right? Like, this was my problem. This is how I answered the 4 questions. This is what, so it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have the final, and here's the whole campaign, and here was the analytics behind it, right? I think
okay, so I'm not sending you though, but I'm not going to send you like a design board or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, okay.
No. When you, in fact, we used to, I'm trying to think, I should go back and look at that Canvas, what the instructions are. We used to ask you to send us your PowerPoint presentation beforehand so we could queue them all up. But since we are going to be operating this remotely, I think it's just best keep your presentation and you will be running it. You can share your screen like we did this morning with the TED Talks. You'll be sharing your screen and presenting, and then we'll just record it, and that way you'll have a copy of your presentation. But yeah, I don't.
Okay, so we'll be talking to you no matter what outcome we have. We'll still be like basically verbally sharing it with you.
Yes,
presenting it to you.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely, yes. So even if it isn't like this is a TED Talk and I'm talking to this audience, or like I'm trying to influence funders to donate to the new marching band practice shell, it would be you standing up there and telling us, okay, I'm starting this social media campaign, and this is how I answered the 4 questions, and these are the stories I'm going to use, and this is my audience, and these are my, what I've learned in this class, basically how I'm going to apply that, right? So just sort of walk us through what your plan is. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have the finalized graphics. If you do, that's great. And if you've got a design board that you want to take a picture of and screenshot it and put that in a presentation, so you do have some visuals, but if you just want it to be you talking to us without the visuals, that works too.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Ellen, how long will we have access to all of the materials in Canvas? Is there a date that all of this information closes out?
No. I think people still have access to all of them, like all the way back from 2017, because I've been doing this. We've had everything hosted in the shell, so I think you'll still have access to it.
Okay, thank you.
Trish, I wasn't aware this was how these presentations.
Yeah, you just sort of went over the details. I'm looking at the assignments now. It just wasn't clear that the videos were of non-TED Talk things, because they all feature people standing in a power pose using their hands and being symmetrical. So what if you're what if the bulk of your presentation of information is going to be written rather than verbal? Do we just talk you through what we've written, or how?
So it's basically so where are you talking about the power poses? Is that, you mean where it says, where the thing I shared with you, it says final assignments?
Yes, it is the final project presentation assignment in the Canvas site.
Oh, yeah, but did you see what I'm sharing now? Have you watched any of these?
Yes, I have watched them.
Okay, good. That's where I wasn't sure about the power pose thing.
Well, I guess that
it's fine. I think with Gabe's, right? I think what he did, he's not giving you this finalized TED Talk thing. He is basically walking us through what his thought process is, why he chose this audience, how he's going to approach them, the stories he's going to appeal to, the emotions that he wants to use intentionally. So he's just talking us through his plans for what he's going to do. So
I see.
So it's totally fine. Yes, you can basically, we've given everybody 30 minutes. So I assume you're going to talk, everybody's going to talk about 7 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe at the most. And then we'll have time to talk afterwards so people can ask questions and, you know, and then also review and go over. And if you have any questions or if we've got any pointers or ways that we can say, you know, any suggestions, but you're not supposed to be talking for the whole 30 minutes. Don't worry about that. And if you don't have any visuals, so let's say yours is going to be, I'm planning on talking to my department about X and get them to support this, to support this new program. You can walk us through the reasons that you're doing this strategy, how you basically answered the 4 questions and how you're going to approach it. And does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a much more, so unless you are doing a TED Talk thing, you're really doing a much more meta level presentation, sort of describing your communication. You're not enacting your strategic communication, you are describing your strategic communications plan and relating it to the things that have been discussed in the class so far.
Yes, unless you do want to take it like, okay, on next week or next month or whatever, I'm plan on addressing new students, and this is the talk I'm going to give them to motivate them to join the Honors College. And then boom, and then you launch into the talk that you've given, that you're giving, that is going to be that would be modeled on everything you've learned in the class, right?
Right. Got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Of course. Any other questions?
Helen, I have a question. I'm looking in Canvas at the final project presentation. So it says that the due date is 5 p.m. September 1.
That's
sign up sheet is much later.
That's, I got to update that. Sorry. I will go in. Basically, all I would like to make sure is that that everybody signs up before, when does this start? This is the 22nd. If everybody could be signed up by in the next 2 weeks, like before the beginning of September, it would be great because it helps us with the rest of our lives. So if I know, like right now, we've got all of Tuesday afternoon still open, and if nobody blocks that, then we can schedule something else in our life, right? So that's all why we want to know by September 1st. It's just schedule it in there. You don't need to submit anything, but it would be really helpful if everybody could go ahead and pick a slot. And then also, like I said, keep this handy so you can either pop in and just watch one if there's someone that you specifically want to watch, or if you want to hang out for a couple hours. We definitely want more, more people online. And the sign up sheet is here. I'd shared it before, but there you go. I just put it back in there again, Trish, the sign up sheet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant, where is it in Canvas? I'm not going to sign up now, but I want to be able I never saw it in the Canvas.
I don't know if Brendan put it in there. I will put it, I'll put it in like discussion. That might be a good place to put it.
That'd be useful. So
yeah, I'll put it in there.
Back to it later.
Yeah, no problem. All right, anybody else? Awesome.
Quick question. Social media that you're going to do this afternoon, is that portion also going to be recorded?
Yes, I'll keep recording it. So in case you have to, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And like I said, if anybody wants to stay on, this social media is really focused on if you want to use social media professionally, just sort of some tips and tricks and things to do if you're, you know, if you're looking at using it personally, not like for your department or your organization. Personally, professionally, not, sorry, if you want to look at it professionally. Hannah, yes. Hannah, did you have a question?
So, yes. So I know a lot of people have been experiencing this, and I'm one of those people in the sense that the project that I started out with might not be the project that I might finish with. Is it all right if our final presentation is not exactly what we have been, you know, doing our previous assignments on, or should we just move forward with what those previous assignments were focused on?
You can, if you want to switch it now, you can. Is that what you're asking? Like, you don't.
Yes, honestly, I've been kind of working under, like, with two different projects in mind, and I don't want to end up, you know, surprising anyone, or if that.
No. It's, you know, this, you're doing, well, sorry, go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, sorry, Hannah, that's totally fine. But we do want to be able to see how you're using the frameworks even much. And so the only reason that we kind of discourage you from it is because, from switching, is because you've already done so much work in one direction. But if that just doesn't make sense for you anymore, like, we're not going to make you push ahead with something that you don't see yourself doing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what is, you know, you're doing this for your own growth and value. So if you're not finding it valuable, or, like, you know, as Anne said, things have changed, or for whatever reason, like, we understand, we're not going to hold you to it. You have to do that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Trish, well, list of the subject titles. That's a really great question. We've never thought about that before, but I like that idea. If we all gave titles to what we're talking on, or maybe just the topic, maybe I'll add a column in there and ask you guys to add in, because that's a great point, especially now that we're not like in the classroom setting and we're all together. So if we are going to log on, that's a good idea that, oh, you're talking about, you know, either curriculum development, or you're talking about vet medicine. It's something that you're interested in. So yeah, let me add a column on there. And if people can, if you don't actually have a title to your presentation, but if you want to say what the subject's about, or if you do have a title, that's great. I think that's a great suggestion, Trish. Thank you. Alrighty. So if you are staying, please stay. If you're leaving, see you in September. And as you all know, we're always here. So if you have another question about your final presentation, you want to give me a shout, just, you know, give me a ping, and I will be pleased to help answer any of your questions. You're welcome, Daryl. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Good luck.
Bye, Jack.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Anne.
Bye.
Let's see who's staying on. Who's 247-47525? I've got one phone. All right, so here we go. Share. I have the right thing. All right, can you all see my screen? Thank you. All right, so as I said, we're going to be talking about how to build your social media community and profile within higher ed. This is logging on, you know, a couple of years ago, I would have said, as we all would have, if you're in this space, you would have gone, Twitter is dead. But after 2016, things changed and Twitter has become a very hot space, for better or for worse. But one thing that I've really noticed a growth in Twitter is the science communications and the academic communications. So I think it is a place that, if you're interested at all, that you should try to dip your feet in. It's a great place to practice your communication skills. If you're not, you know, you can get in there and just sort of watch for a while before you start talking, and you don't ever have to talk if you don't want to. But it's still a great place to find information and to start understanding what's going on in your professional community. You can also foster interest in your own research. You can see what other people are, you know, like other researchers in your area, maybe things they're studying or new papers they have out. Especially now, there's so many, you know, there's a lot of open articles that are going out there that are interesting, to say the least. Anyway, so before you get on, I think the first thing you have to do before you decide to launch into a platform, and I would say here it's going to be, as an academic, it's going to be Twitter and Instagram are probably going to be your two main places. Facebook seems to be more like for your organization. If you're going to build your own personal profile, I wouldn't plan on doing it on Facebook. If your main audience is students, then you might want to also think of Snapchat. I'm not going to even talk about TikTok because who knows what's happening there, but there's a lot happening on TikTok. But if you're not looking to talk to, like, if you are looking to talk to undergraduate students, you could consider Snapchat, but absolutely Instagram and Twitter. Instagram stories would be a great place to get them. So the other thing you have to decide is what kind of value are you going to add to them? Are you going to be like a knowledge translator? Students, if you are trying to get to students, sometimes they don't want to go to the UF website or the main website. They'd rather find information, like, let's say they're interested in studying forestry. Rather than going to the UF website, if they see you as a professor or an administrator in the forestry department and they start following you on Twitter, they might get a better idea of what the department is actually like, what kind of research you're doing, and they'll tend to stay on, you know, the research shows that students tend to stay away from that main sort of, your main department website, right? And anyway, so that's the first thing, is like decide who you're talking to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple examples. Paige Brown, she's on Twitter and Instagram. It's called From the Lab Bench. And she's got a huge following. And this is a place where science communications has really exploded, I think, in the last couple of years. And it's a great quote from her: scientists who use social media do so overwhelmingly to practice their own communication skills and to explain your science to lay audiences. An example of, I'm going to probably be stopping and actually going to people's pages to show you more, but this is an example of a professor in our college. Yes, we're in communications, college communications, but there's plenty of psychologists and neurologists who have just as many followers or more followers. Ted Spiker is a professor in our college. He's got the blue dot. If you see his name, the blue dot next to his name means he's a verified, like that's really him. So it's, you know, like sometimes you look up, if you're on Twitter and you look up an author or somebody you want to follow, someone famous, and there might be a lot of, quote, fake accounts. If they've got the blue number, I mean the blue check, that means that really is them. They really are the person that you think they are. So look, he's got 13,000 followers. Ted's audience mainly are his students. He teaches a social media class, a sports media class. Sorry, not social media, sorry. He teaches a sports media class, and he uses social media a lot in that class. He uses social media to talk directly to his students. He uses it to give them so I always say like pop quizzes. He makes sure that they're paying attention because he'll put things on Twitter, because I guess in the sports media space, he wants these young journalists to realize that this is a very important space to be in. So he wants them always on there and following it. So he'll drop sort of like what we call Easter eggs, hints and stuff on his social media platform. I don't know if I can click to it. So once you sort of know who you were talking to, is it other researchers? Is it students? Are you talking to other administrators? Are you talking to, you know, other people that are in your same space? You want to start to build your community. And you do this by sharing the content that they care about. And this gets back to what we're talking about, you know, the first imperative, bring them a gift, right? What can you offer them that they don't already have? How can you solve a problem that you think they might have, or something that gives them actionable items, things they're looking for, things they're searching for. And another professor in our college, I think I'm going to have to exit out of that. Am I still sharing my screen? Say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mindy, I want to actually go to Mindy's page so I can show you Mindy McAdams. All right, can you all see Mindy McAdams' page on here? The Twitter page? Am I showing you the right page? Okay, so this is Mindy. Mindy is a Knight professor. She's a digital journalism professor. She is a guru in the digital journalism and data journalism space. She has 10,000 followers. She provides information to her followers that they might need. What are they looking for? And one of the amazing ways that she does it is through what are called lists. So if you watch my mouse and I follow over here to these three little dots, when I click on it, it says view lists. These are lists that Mindy has put together for people that she follows for information. So if I'm following Mindy, I know like, here are the best Mindcasters that she knows, that Mindy knows. Here are all the AJM profs that she knows. If you're interested in design, this is her list. So let's say I click on, Florida politics. These are all the people, this is a list of everybody she follows who she thinks is important in Florida politics. Journalism professors, here is a list that those people who teach the fine art of journalism. So this is a list of everybody that she says, this is a list you want to follow. So if I follow Mindy, it's because I want to know more about digital journalism. And I'm like, oh, and who does she follow? Like, what lists has she put together? Who does she think is important for me to listen to? She's got one just on weather that she says, a list that's just like weathermen. So if there's a tornado, a hurricane coming, you can actually change your feed. So all you see, like Mindy can change her feed. So all she sees are the weather people that she trusts, that she wants to listen to when the hurricane's coming. So there's some really useful things that you can provide to your community by creating these lists and by knowing what it is you want to give to them. What can you provide to them? What is that you can offer? Here's another thing. This is from the Lab Bench, Paige Giroux, the one I talked about earlier. So here she's giving this to everybody. Look at this, is a great casting the net wide, SciComm resources online. She's sending this out for everybody to see. So she's giving them something of value. And here's something else from her. What editorial tools? So now she's asking you, she's trying to get from the community, she's crowdsourcing. Any recommendations? What editorial calendar tools do folks use? So she's using it as a way to bring the community together, to ask the community for recommendations. She's probably going to curate this, is my guess, because she has so many followers. This is one thing that she's going to give her community. She first curate this from everybody, and then she's probably made it into a Google Doc or something. And then I'm going to pass over that. Okay, so the other thing you can do is when you connect to the community, you can also connect them to each other. So here's an example from a tweet where he went to Ricardo has gone to a conference, right? And he's tweeting out what this presenter said, right? So the Twitter user attends a presentation and posts a tweet about that presentation, right? And the followers will retweet it. So this is a way for you to help build out your community. You go to a conference and you think what that person talking about is really important, or you want to, like we were talking about before, building relationships, you quote them, you tweet them, people will start noticing. They'll probably tweet you back and say, thanks for sharing, like, thanks for sharing, glad you like my ideas, and then maybe a conversation will follow later. Again, it's a great place to share your research. If you've either read something, or you are, you've just written something, or you found something that's beneficial, share it out with your community. Because remember, we want to give people a gift. It's not all about me. I'm sharing things that I think can be useful to my community. This is just sort of, oh wait, I'm going to skip over that, sorry. This is another way you can use it, which is interesting, crowdsourcing. Here she is doing a quick Twitter poll for my dissertation, if anyone can help. You can do polls on Twitter, which is awesome. So if you want to just get the pulse of the nation right now, send out a poll. You obviously have to have a pretty big following to do this, but once you've established, so if someone like Ted or Mindy did a Twitter poll, they could probably get some pretty good data. She's got 490 votes. I mean, this is a couple years ago, but it is definitely a tool that is on Twitter that you can and should make use of. Lisa Scott, who was in the SCA cohort a couple years ago, I saw this, I just pulled this up today. I'd love to ask her, because she's got 2,000 followers, which is actually a pretty good number for a personal feed. And I know she's just really starting her presence, like in the last couple of years on Twitter. Actually, after this class is when she started building her feed. So I noticed today she asked, does anyone have any approved IRB language for Lena devices that would be willing to share with me? Now that means nothing to me, but she has followers that are also in psychology. And so she's already got 2 replies. That was 3 hours ago. She might have some more replies now, people helping. So that's a place for you to get, to mine your community for information. Also, as an academic, you can sort of see what's going on. If you follow academic chatter, there's a hashtag academic Twitter, which is different than academic chatter, but there's 105,000 people following this, and I follow this feed, and it's really interesting, some of the things that people are talking about on this feed, and I think it's just a good, again, give you a pulse of what subjects people are talking about and whether or not you're going to insert yourself there. There's also Black in the Ivory, which there's hashtag Black in the Ivory. You'll see that at the bottom. Hashtag academic chatter, hashtag academic Twitter. These are all places, if you do start your feed, that you might want to start looking at and following. If you don't know, oops, sorry, wrong thing. If you're super new to Twitter and don't even know what hashtags are, don't worry. My husband doesn't know either. I had to teach him as well. So a hashtag is a way that you basically can narrow down to a subject matter that you're interested in learning about or hearing about. So here we have hashtag inclusion. So if I were just to type in my Twitter feed, hashtag inclusion, I would get anybody talking about inclusion, I would get their feed, right? Anybody who's talking about inclusion that used that hashtag. But so it's basically a way to mark your conversation so everybody knows. So it's sort of filed under that. And you can use more than one hashtag. In Twitter, they say 3 to 4 is the most you should use. Instagram, you can use tons, though the metrics are changing, but definitely use the hashtags if you do post. If you're not posting and you just want to know what people are talking about in your area of research, you can use something like this. This is called Hashtagify Me, this website I've pulled up. It's free. You can, and you type in. So let's say you're interested in, I don't know, Trish, if you're still on here. So like social, like, or feminist literature. If I type that in there and if I hit search, actually, let's see if I can do a real one. We can do a real thing. Somebody give me something to look up. Is anybody with me?
Yeah, sorry.
We're here.
Just quiet.
So give me something to look up other than COVID. Give me a subject you want to look up. And we can find the hashtags that are best for it.
Human resources.
Oh my gosh. Human resource. Did I spell it right? Resources. Search. So it's kind of popular. 57, but here, this is what's really great, here are all the other hashtags. So it looks like they're using HR, right? HR is the main. Are you still seeing my screen, the correct screen, Brandon?
Yes, and I see that HR is big in word cloud.
Right, so that means that's the most used, 57%, right? And then it also shows you how it's been used. If you pay for this site, you can get much deeper in the analytics. And there are other sites like this, but I just use this because I've been using it and it comes up in my bookmarks. But if I can't think like, oh, what do I tag it with? I'll just type different words in here and it will come up. And sometimes you're totally off. Like communications is a big one. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many different things. And it's like, do I mean jobs, free PR, social media, right? And it's like, I really don't mean any of those. I mean like social, I mean like advocacy work, right? So it helps you really narrow down, figure out where your tweets are so you reach the correct, figure out where your tweet's gonna reach so you reach the correct audience. Okay.
Do you have any idea why Ottawa would be one of the top things that come up for communications?
No, unless it's trending for some reason, right? Like, why would it be trending? I have no idea. Maybe there's some news there, Ottawa news, Ottawa City. We could put it in here and see what happens. Ottawa, how do you do it? Is that how you spell it? It might be trending, that might be why. No, January 30th, I don't know. Maybe they had tweeted a lot. Sometimes if there's a conference and a lot of people are tweeting about it, it'll make it trend. So, all right. And here I talked about academic Twitter. This is, if I were to type in academic Twitter, this is what I get. Different, they may not be talking about the same thing, but these are people that are tagging academic Twitter, right? And you can see what people, there's even the last one is a job opportunity. So the next thing is don't leave the party. So if you are going to do this and you're really trying to establish your presence, you need to stay online. So I would say don't go more than 48 hours without checking or answering your Twitter or responding in your Twitter. Try to post. I mean, if you can post once a day, that would be awesome. If you post every other day, that's great. But if you go once a week, like me, I'm not trying to build my profile because I have to work on the one for our center. And I feel like I communicate from there more than from my personal one. Annie and Anne have a very strong presence on Twitter and Instagram. So I personally am more on Instagram, but I personally am not trying to build my professional profile because I am managing the center's one and I just don't have the bandwidth to do mine. But Annie and Anne are on theirs every day. So, or go every other day. If you aren't sure if you're going to be able to get on all the time, there is you can go in there and create a reply function, especially when someone follows you. So this is on the one on the right was Jack Payne's. When you start following Jack Payne, he may not answer you right away, but you get a picture from IFAS and it says, thank you for the follow. And here, Heather Luca, same thing. Thanks. This was ours. So when Heather started following us, ours being the center when we were doing the Frank gathering. We say, thanks for following us. We can't wait to connect with you. In the meantime, sign up, blah, blah, blah. So we're giving them a call to action, right? But we're not ignoring them, because they might start following you and you miss it because you haven't been on for 4 days. So at least this way, there's a bit of a connection. And here we give them a call to action, sign up and follow us. What's a cool website, Brandon? An old one? Oh, the Hashtagify Me.
Oh yeah, I thought you were asking me for a cool website in general.
No. Oh yeah, no. I just finally. Sorry, I just.
Yeah, the Hashtagify thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the next thing when you're on your social media, and I know I'm focusing on Twitter, but it's the same with Instagram. I would go, if you have a very visual job, definitely be on Instagram, because that's what it's all about, are the pictures. So if you're anything in the sciences, I think is a great, there's a great opportunity there. And like any of the STEMs in your lab, if you're out, and even if you're in the lab all day, there's some really cool, fun things you can post and interesting things. So think visually if you'd rather be on Instagram than Twitter. But I know I'm focusing mainly on Twitter. So here from the lab, Paige is actually also on Instagram. She's pretty prevalent there as well. And, you know, it's very authentic. And she actually did a research project, and you'll notice in the top right, it says to selfie or not to selfie. And because she had enough followers, she actually did a research experiment, and then wrote a paper and promoted it in her website. In her Twitter site, which I think was pretty phenomenal. So here's an example from the bench, SciComm Nerd. He posted this, scientists have fun too, in a recent study. So he talks about his study, but then he's got this funny video of him playing with the, whatever that device is with the hands. Also sorry, is there a question?
No, it's a glove box.
A glove box. Oh, that's a thing. But so this was here, the challenge: break the science stereotype with your Instagram posts. So he's calling on everybody, scientists, show us how you are, like being authentic, and again, breaking those stereotypes. Another way to be authentic is through live video. Instagram with stories or Instagram live, I think, especially now during the pandemic, you've seen a lot of use of this from everywhere, from like researchers to disc jockeys, like to DJs. Instagram live video is really taken off, I think, during this pandemic. But when you are live, it's immediate, it's authentic, it can be super interactive, right? And I know that I'm talking or I'm watching a real person, right? You can use it to educate, you can use it to entertain, right? Share what's happening. So, but don't be afraid of it. I mean, live video can really help connect you and show your authenticity. Going back to Ted Spiker. So if you don't follow Ted, if you're interested in sports at all, you should follow Ted. He's great. And Ted does something that we do at the center. If we're trying to reach someone and we can't reach them, we send them a message in Twitter, and we'll say something, we'll tweet at them like, we love your work. Would you come to Frank and be a speaker? Or we love your work. Would you come to our classroom? And Ted Spiker does this all the time, and he gets amazing sports people. Of course, he's got 10,000 followers, but he gets famous sport people to come in and talk in his class. And he actually got, I think it was Ocho Cinco, who is a bye Matthew. I think it was Ocho Cinco, who used to be or is a football player with a reputation. But anyway, he tweeted at him and actually got him to come when he was in Gainesville, to come into his classroom. So it's a way, if you are authentic and if you have created these connections, it's a way for you can leverage them, let's say, by maintaining that authenticity. Ted is very authentic in his feed. So And then if you've done something like this, like let's say you've brought in a speaker, this is a great way to share, again, build your profile, share with the community. Oh, look, this is what Ted's doing, etc. Yes, we should still pay attention to analytics. I know analytics are boring, but we should pay attention to them. We can look at engagements, impressions. We can look at our followers, so our followers just mean how many people are aware of us. Engagement is really what we want. And that's people not just liking, but people who actually comment or retweet, right? And I'll show you where it is if you can't see it. Where am I? Oh, here, home, more, analytics. So this is on Twitter. I'm probably embarrassed about our analytics right now because we haven't been doing a lot lately. But anyway, so it's a free tool and you can measure, you can see your impressions, how many visits you've had, your top tweets. You can also see, log on here and see somewhere in here. There is a way, oh here, tweets, more, it's under more. Yeah, where you can see actually daily impressions, which tweets got the most, which got promoted. And then there's some real big brother stuff where you can drill down and see like if they like ice cream or if they like dogs. It's really kind of scary what analytics, and it's all free in your Twitter and your Facebook. I think Instagram has it as well. And that's, I'm gonna stop sharing and see who's left. Oh, I've got some people here still.
And there were 5.
And then there were 5, but that's great. Okay, so yeah, so that's just like a really quick run through of, look at this, 6, I said 7 at the beginning, look at me, 7 ways, and I only gave you 6. I put this together the other night, so. What tool didn't you know about, Brandon?
The Twitter analytics. I mean, I'm familiar with Facebook's analytics, but I didn't know about the Twitter one.
Yeah. You kind of have to, now I have to like figure out where did I get into them.
It makes me think, I'm looking at my own Twitter account and I'm like, what's the point of even tweeting?
Well,
like shouting into the void.
No, well, my personal one I don't have here.
That's what I mean personally.
How many do I have? My personal one, how many followers do I have? Ellen, home, profile, there I am. I have 400 followers. But like I said, I really haven't worked on building it. Let's see what Annie's got. Oops, that's me. Annie Neiman. Annie has almost 2,000 followers. So that's actually pretty good. And so she's got, let's see, that she's got this one pinned at the top, but then here she's retweeting. She has people, she's asking here, academic Twitter, who are your favorite scholars studying vaccine hesitancy? We just got an agreement, a service agreement to look into this for the hesitancy that's expected with the COVID vaccine when it comes out. So she just throws this out there. Who is there, right? Looking for scholars who study aspects of trust and misinformation. We're putting together a list of like 25 scholars, and then she's got all these answers, which is awesome. So it is a way for you to, once you've built that community, if I put it out there, I may or may not get any, depends who follows me. But because she's already built that community, she can, use that, what they call the social media effect. She can leverage it. So if as Anne said earlier, it's a long game, Brendan. But I think it's really important to think of what you want to provide in that space that isn't being provided, or what can you add to it, and how do you how do you want to play in that space, and from that's how you get your followers. You're bringing them value, and that's why they're gonna start following you. And if you tweet consistently, which Annie does, Annie is up late tweeting because she's got a baby that stays up late. No, Annie, even before her baby, she's been quite good at being on social media. So I go through here and see August 11th, August 12th, August 10th. August 10th, she's got 2 tweets, the 9th, the 8th, the 7th. So she's tweeting almost, on the 8th, she tweeted, that must have been a weekend, 4 times, the 6th. So she's almost every single day she's on there. And like I said, Anne is too, and Anne, Henry Timms, the guy that wrote New Power, we didn't know him, and she just tweeted at him and said, I loved your book. Would you come talk to my class? And he did. He said, sure. And they set up a time, and he logged on and Zoomed into her class 2 semesters ago. And that's how we got to know him. So again, once you've got that, built that community, you can leverage it. Do you guys have any more questions? Or any questions or?
Thanks a lot for this. I'm kind of new to all this. I just looked, I think I have 5 followers on my Twitter account. I don't use it. I started it probably a couple years ago, but I am responsible for our social media account for our center. And so we use Facebook and had dabbled a little bit in Twitter, but interestingly enough, our target audience, when we've asked them every once in a while, they're not really using Twitter. They don't use Facebook a whole lot either professionally.
Who's your audience?
It's mostly healthcare providers, and they're mostly older demographic, like 45 up. Skewed more towards Facebook than I think.
Yes, older people are, because a lot of our people are older too, and they all use Facebook and for the Master Gardener program. For the Center for Land Use Efficiency, it's all professors, it's all faculty, and it's more, I always think of it more as a business to business kind of thing. Like we are sharing each other's research and the need for, grad students, things like that, more than we are looking for people who are interested. Because most of the time, I mean, that's who that audience is really for the center. But yeah, we get very few people. Like we have a Master Gardener Twitter account, but it mostly gets retweeted by like county websites. We retweet us. Most of our like questions and actual interaction always comes from Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. Also, I think this is more if you are, I mean, we as a center, we are on here on Twitter and we're on Facebook. Probably equal. We use them for different things, but our interactions are probably equal there. I think we've got more followers on Facebook, but this is more what I've been talking about today is more you as a as a professional, but even as like with
I would like to figure out what I can share.
Yeah, well, I think this is where it's like where do you want to be? Like, what do you want to be known for? And it may not even be professional. Maybe you're a hobbyist and another, you're a hobbyist painter. And so you really want to explore that space,
Right now, I just promote, the Alzheimer's Association is what I mostly promote on there.
Right.
I do like charity stuff for them. And that's what I've been using it for. But it would be interesting to think of a way to use it for me professionally, not just personally.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and I was thinking you were saying about, Karen saying about like healthcare providers, there's this list, and I just shared the page. This is virus scientists. So this is a list of 24 people, members, 14,000 people follow this list. These are academic experts who help you understand the coronavirus, right? So here are all these PhD and MDs that are on Twitter. So there are a lot of, you might want to, I'm not saying your audience is there, but some of them might be. So you might want to just sort of maybe pull up some of the names of the people and see if they're on there and start following them and see what they're talking about. You can use it it's what they call social listening. So you can strictly look at it as social listening. I also go onto Reddit. So did you all get that survey? the survey that was sent out about going back to campus, right? Remember?
Yes.
There was
Oh, yeah.
a survey sent out. Well,
Yes.
yeah, our center was involved in helping put that together, as were some of our faculty. And it's the day it hit, I just went on to Twitter. And and not Twitter, sorry, I went on to Reddit. And I went into Reddit and I just typed it in to see if people were talking about it. Oh my gosh, the students were blowing up about it. Like just saying, this isn't gonna work, no one's gonna wear their masks, everyone's gonna party. Can you believe they're asking this, that? And it was just hearing sort of what they call, it's like, that's called social listening, like the back channel, what everybody's saying. So, so social listening is something like, if you know that these are the top 5 people in this area, it's another way that you can use social media if you don't want to actually, be on it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, because as a person, I get news from Twitter, honestly, that I wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, I do too. It can be stressful.
Oh yeah.
It can be like super stressful.